Adil Khan was 24 years old, a young man with eyes full of stubborn fire and a heart that often chose emotion over logic. He was the kind of person who would rather lose everything than betray what he felt was right. That defiance had always made him different in his family, admired by some, feared by others. But tonight, he stood at a crossroads where one decision could either bind him closer to his loved ones or tear him away from them forever. Should he give up the girl he loved to keep his family's honor intact? Or should he risk becoming an outcast, a son disowned by the very people who raised him? And if he chose love, would it be strong enough to survive the storm that was about to come? The sunlight streamed through the wide glass windows of the Khan family's living room, casting golden rays across the polished wooden floor. The house was alive with activity, voices overlapping, the clinking of teacups, and the faint aroma of cardamom and fried parathas wafting from the kitchen. It should have been an ordinary morning in Lahore, filled with laughter and warmth, but there was a heaviness in the air, a silence beneath the noise, as if the walls themselves knew a storm was about to break. Adil sat quietly in the corner, his hands gripping a folded letter in his lap. His mother, Shaista Begum, bustled about, serving tea to her husband and children, her dupatta slipping as she bent forward. His younger sister Hina hummed softly while scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the tension that pulsed in her brother's chest. And then there was his father, Rashid Khan, a man of iron will and unshakable pride, whose very glance could silence an entire room. Adil had rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times, but now, as the seconds dragged, his throat felt dry. He opened the letter again, not because he needed to read it, but because it gave him strength. It was a simple piece of paper, with handwriting that leaned slightly to the left, delicate yet firm. The words were a confession of love, a promise of loyalty, written by the girl who had captured his heart, Sana Malik. Sana. Just the thought of her name softened his face. She was 22, with eyes that carried both innocence and courage, the kind of girl who spoke softly but whose silence could scream louder than anyone's voice. They had met at university, in a crowded lecture hall where she had dropped her books and he had bent to pick them up. From that moment, their paths had intertwined, and no force, not distance, not disapproval, had been able to untangle them. Until now. The problem wasn't love. It was bloodlines. Sana came from a family his parents despised. The Maliks and the Khans had been neighbors once, allies once, but a bitter feud decades ago had turned them into rivals. Land disputes, old betrayals, whispered insults, hatreds that were passed down like heirlooms. Rashid Khan had made it clear, no son of his would ever disgrace the family by marrying into the Maliks. Adil finally stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound drew every pair of eyes toward him. His mother's brows furrowed. His sister tilted her head curiously. And his father set down his teacup with deliberate slowness. Abba, Adil began, his voice steady despite the storm inside, I need to tell you something important. Rashid Khan leaned back, folding his arms. Then speak. Don't waste words. Adil's throat tightened. He glanced at his mother, hoping for a flicker of softness, but her expression was unreadable. Taking a deep breath, he unfolded the letter and placed it on the table before his father. I love her, he said firmly. Her name is Sana Malik. And I want to marry her. The room froze. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Hina's eyes widened. Shaista's hand trembled slightly, nearly spilling tea. And Rashid Khan's face darkened, his jaw tightening as though the weight of his son's words had struck him like a physical blow. Repeat that, Rashid said quietly, his voice low and dangerous. Adil did not flinch. I love Sana Malik. I want to marry her. The slap came faster than Adil could anticipate. His father's hand struck his cheek with such force that his head snapped to the side. Hina gasped, covering her mouth. Shaista closed her eyes as if in pain. You dare bring shame into this house? Rashid's voice thundered, shaking the walls. A Malik? Of all people, a Malik? Have you forgotten who you are, whose blood runs in your veins? Adil lifted his head slowly, his cheek burning but his eyes unyielding. I haven't forgotten, Abba. But love is not about blood. It is about truth. And the truth is, I cannot live without her. Rashid rose to his feet, his towering frame casting a shadow over his son.
Then you have already chosen.
If you go down this path, Adil, you are no longer my son. The words sliced through the air, sharp and merciless.
Shaista's breath caught in her throat.
Rashid, please, she whispered, but her husband silenced her with a glare.
Adil's heart pounded.
He had known his father's reaction would be harsh, but hearing the words aloud, being disowned, cut off, still pierced him like a blade. Yet beneath the pain, there was a strange calmness, as if destiny had been preparing him for this moment all along.
Then so be it, Adil whispered. If loving her makes me unworthy of being your son, then I accept it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Hina burst into tears, running out of the room.
Shaista sank into a chair, clutching her dupatta as if it were the only thing holding her together. And Rashid Khan, his face carved with fury, pointed toward the door.
Get out, he commanded. Before I forget that I raised you with my own hands.
Adil's chest ached, but he did not argue. He turned, walked toward the door, and stepped out into the burning sunlight. The street outside was alive with vendors calling out prices, rickshaws honking, children playing cricket on dusty corners, but for Adil, the world felt distant, muffled, unreal.
As he walked, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Sana. Adil, my father suspects something. Please meet me. We need to talk before it's too late. Too late?
The words chilled him.
What did she mean? Did her family know about their secret meetings? Were they planning something?
Adil's mind raced. He had lost his home, his family, his name in one stroke, but if Sana was in danger, he couldn't waste another second. He quickened his pace, weaving through the crowded bazaar, his eyes scanning the road ahead. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of an azan echoed from a mosque, solemn and haunting, as though warning him that what lay ahead would test him even more than what he had left behind. And then, as he turned the corner, he froze. Sana stood there, her face pale, her eyes brimming with unshed tears.
But she wasn't alone.
Two men stood beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, with hard expressions that could only belong to Malik family enforcers. One of them held Sana's arm too tightly, his grip leaving red marks on her skin. Adil's blood ran cold. Adil, Sana whispered, her voice breaking.
They know.
The world seemed to tilt. He had thought the greatest battle would be against his father's disapproval. But now, staring into the eyes of men who looked at him like prey, he realized the truth: the real war was only beginning. The afternoon sun scorched the street, burning down upon Adil as if even the heavens disapproved of his choice. Dust floated in the air, rickshaws sputtered past, vendors shouted over piles of fruit and fabric, yet all sound faded into a dull roar in Adil's ears. His eyes were fixed only on Sana and the two men who stood like walls beside her. Her dupatta slipped from one shoulder, fluttering in the warm breeze, but she made no move to adjust it.
Her hands trembled.
Fear was written all over her face, but even then, when her gaze met Adil's, there was a desperate plea. Adil, her voice cracked, just loud enough for him to hear over the noise of the bazaar.
Please, don't say anything.
The taller of the two men, broad chest, thick mustache, eyes like cold steel, tightened his grip on her arm. His voice was deep, dangerous.
So this is the boy? The one you've been meeting behind our backs?
Adil clenched his fists. His mind screamed at him to run forward, to tear her away from them, to protect her. But he forced himself still.
One reckless step could put Sana in more danger than she already was. Yes, Sana whispered, her lips trembling. This is Adil.
The second man, leaner but just as menacing, stepped closer to Adil, his eyes narrowing as though studying a criminal. Son of Rashid Khan, he said with a sneer.
So the rumors were true.
A Khan boy with a Malik girl.
Do you realize what that means?
Adil finally spoke, his voice low but firm.
It means we love each other. And you can't stop us.
The taller man's laughter was harsh, mocking.
Love? He spat the word onto the ground. Do you think this is some college fairy tale?
You've disgraced both families.
Do you even know what will happen when the elders hear of this? Adil took a step forward, his heart hammering. I don't care what the elders say. I won't let you hurt her. The man's smile vanished. His grip on Sanaa's arm tightened, making her wince.
Then maybe you'll care when you realize she is not yours to protect.
She belongs to the Malik family.
And we will decide her fate, not you.
Something snapped inside Adil.
His father's rejection still burned on his cheek, and now these men dared to claim ownership over the woman he loved. He lunged forward, grabbing the taller man's wrist. The crowd around them stirred, whispers rising as people noticed the confrontation. Vendors leaned forward, curious. Children paused their cricket game.
Even the rickshaw drivers slowed, sensing trouble. Leave her.
Adil shouted, his voice carrying down the narrow street.
The man's grip loosened just enough for Sanaa to stumble back.
But before Adil could shield her, the leaner man swung his arm and shoved Adil hard in the chest. He staggered back, almost falling.
Sanaa cried out. Stop.
Please, she begged, her hands trembling as she tried to stand between them.
Don't hurt him. The taller man snarled. You want to save him? Fine. Come with us quietly, Sanaa.
Or else this boy won't walk away from here.
Adil's breath came fast. He looked at Sanaa, her eyes wide, filled with panic,
and in that moment he knew she was about to sacrifice herself just to keep him safe.
He couldn't let that happen.
No, Adil said, his voice steady now. You're not taking her anywhere.
The leaner man scoffed. And how will you stop us, Khan boy? Alone? With what army? Adil glanced around.
The crowd had thickened. Dozens of eyes were watching, whispering, judging. His reputation, his family's honor, Sanaa's safety, they were all hanging by a thread. He raised his voice, letting it carry through the bazaar. You think you can drag a girl through the streets like property? He shouted.
Is this what the Malik family stands for? Everyone here can see what you're doing.
A murmur rippled through the onlookers.
Some nodded.
A few men stepped forward, curiosity turning to unease. The taller Malik enforcer realized the danger, public shame. His eyes narrowed.
Enough, he hissed. He grabbed Sanaa's wrist again, but this time Adil was ready. With a surge of strength fueled by fury and fear, he yanked the man's arm away and shoved him back.
The man stumbled into a fruit cart, sending oranges rolling across the ground.
Gasps rose from the crowd. Children shouted. Someone clapped. The leaner man swore loudly and lunged at Adil.
They grappled, fists flying, dust rising as they shoved each other against the walls of the narrow street. Sanaa screamed, trying to break them apart, but the crowd had surged closer now, forming a circle. Some cheered, others argued, but no one dared step between them.
A punch landed squarely on Adil's jaw, sending him to one knee.
His vision blurred, blood filling his mouth. The enforcer grabbed him by the collar, raising his fist again. But then, suddenly, a voice boomed over the chaos.
Enough!
Stop this madness! The crowd parted. An elderly man with a white beard and a commanding presence pushed through, supported by a wooden cane. His clothes were simple, but his voice carried weight, the kind that silenced even the boldest men.
It was Malik Sahib himself, Sanaa's grandfather, the patriarch of the Malik family.
Sanaa froze. Adil's heart sank. The man who had sworn decades of hatred against the Khans was now staring directly at him.
What is happening here?
Malik Sahib demanded, his voice cutting through the air like thunder.
The taller enforcer straightened, wiping dust from his clothes. Baba Ji, we caught her with him. The Khan boy. They've been meeting in secret. Gasps echoed. Malik Sahib's gaze shifted from Sanaa to Adil, cold and unyielding. Is this true?
Adil forced himself to stand despite the pain. He met the old man's eyes without flinching.
Yes. It's true. I love your granddaughter.
And she loves me.
Sanaa's lips trembled.
She wanted to speak, but her grandfather raised a hand, silencing her. His face hardened. Shame, he muttered, almost to himself. First the Khans insulted us years ago, and now their son tries to steal from us. My blood will not be stained with their dishonor. He turned to the enforcers. Take Sana home. Now. No! Sana cried, her voice breaking. She clung to Adil's arm, tears streaming down her face. Please, Dada G. Don't do this. I love him. The words hung heavy in the air. A hush fell over the crowd. Love, spoken so boldly, so recklessly, in front of the entire bazaar. Malik Sahib's face turned red with fury. Enough, he thundered. You are coming with me, Sana. Or I swear, I will disown you this very moment. Adil's chest heaved. His father had already cast him out. Now Sana was being forced to choose between him and her family. He whispered, desperate, Sana, don't let them break us apart. She looked at him, torn, shaking, her heart in her eyes. But slowly, painfully, her grip loosened. The enforcers pulled her away. Adil, she cried, reaching out even as they dragged her back. I'll find you. I promise. And then she was gone, swallowed into the crowd, her sobs echoing like a haunting melody in Adil's ears. He stood there, breathless, bloodied, surrounded by strangers. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring, whispering, shaking their heads. Some looked at him with pity, others with scorn. Adil wiped the blood from his lip and straightened his shoulders. He had lost his father, his home, and now Sana had been torn from his side. But deep inside, he knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a war he had no choice but to fight. And as he turned to leave, a hand gripped his shoulder. He spun around, ready for another enemy, but instead, he saw a familiar face. It was his sister, Hina. Her eyes were red from crying, her dupatta hastily thrown over her head as though she had run through the streets to find him. Bye, she whispered, her voice trembling. Come with me. I know something about Abba, and about the Maliks. You need to hear it. Adil stared at her, stunned. What are you talking about? Hina looked around nervously, lowering her voice. Not here. If Abba finds out I told you, everything will change. Her hand tightened on his. But you must know the truth, Adil. Because this fight, it didn't start with you and Sana. It started long before either of you were born. Adil's breath caught. His heart raced. A hidden truth? A past that connected both families? Suddenly, the feud didn't feel like just a family grudge, it felt like a secret wrapped in darkness, waiting to explode. What do you mean, Hina? He whispered urgently. Tell me, what truth? Hina's lips parted. She was about to speak. But then, a shadow fell over them. A figure stepped out from the alley, blocking their path. A man Adil recognized instantly. It was Rashid Khan, his father. And his face was filled with a rage Adil had never seen before. The alley fell silent when Rashid Khan stepped forward, his heavy footsteps echoing against the brick walls. His presence alone was enough to drain the warmth from the air, leaving only dread behind. His broad shoulders blocked the afternoon light, casting Adil and Hina in his shadow. Adil's jaw tightened. Blood still lingered on his lips from the fight in the bazaar, but now the wound seemed small compared to the storm burning in his father's eyes. Rashid Khan was a man feared by neighbors, respected in gatherings, a pillar of pride and authority. But to Adil in this moment, he was no father, he was the executioner of every fragile hope. What are you doing here with him? Rashid's voice was sharp as a blade, directed at Hina. Did I not warn you, Hina, to stay away from your brother after what he has done? Hina flinched but did not let go of Adil's hand. Her small fingers tightened, trembling, yet determined. Abba, please, just listen. There's something he needs to know. Something about the Maliks, something about... Enough! Rashid's roar shook her words into silence. His eyes blazed. You dare defy me, girl? You think you know better than your father? I will not have this house divided further because of Adil's madness. Adil stepped forward, standing protectively between Hina and his father. His voice came out low but steady.
Why are you so afraid of her speaking, Abba? What is it you don't want me to hear? You disown me already, so what difference does it make if the truth comes out? For a fleeting second, Rashid's eyes flickered with something fear, or perhaps guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He straightened, his jaw clenched tight. The only truth you need to know, Rashid said coldly, is that the Maliks are poison. They destroyed our family once, and they will destroy us again if you continue down this path. If you value what little dignity you have left, you will forget that girl forever. Adil's chest burned with frustration. Then tell me why, Abba. What happened between our families? What are you hiding from me? Rashid's face hardened like stone. Some things are better buried. But Hina, tears brimming in her eyes, shook her head furiously. No, Abba. Not anymore. He deserves to know. He has a right to the truth. Her voice cracked, but it carried the weight of desperation. She turned to Adil, clutching his arm. The fight between our family and the Maliks, it wasn't just about land. It wasn't just business. It was blood. Someone died. And it was not the Malik's fault, not entirely. Hina. Rashid's voice thundered. He raised his hand, his palm poised to strike her. Adil's body reacted before his mind did. He grabbed his father's wrist midair, stopping the blow. The two men stood locked in a silent struggle, father and son, eyes blazing, muscles trembling. It was not just a clash of strength. It was a clash of generations, of pride versus truth, of silence versus love. For the first time in his life, Adil did not lower his eyes before his father. He stared straight back. If you want to hit someone, hit me. But don't you dare raise your hand on her. Rashid's face twisted in rage, but something in Adil's defiance forced him to drop his arm. He yanked his wrist free and stepped back, his breath heavy. His voice, when it came, was low and dangerous. You are no longer my son. And if you take one more step into the Malik's shadow, I swear, you will no longer be alive either. The words cut like a curse. With a final glare, Rashid turned and stormed out of the alley, his footsteps echoing until they vanished into the noise of the city. The silence that followed was suffocating. Hina sank against the wall, covering her face with trembling hands. Adil stood there, chest heaving, trying to calm the storm inside him. Hina, he said gently, kneeling beside her. What were you trying to tell me? What blood? Whose death? Hina looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. Her lips trembled. Years ago, before you were old enough to remember, there was a fight. It wasn't about money or property like everyone says. It was about a girl. A girl from the Malik family, and a boy from ours. Adil's eyes widened. What? Hina nodded slowly. They loved each other. Secretly. Just like you and Sanaa. But when both families found out, everything turned violent. There was shouting, threats, fights in the streets. And one night, she swallowed hard. The boy, our uncle, was found dead. The Malik girl disappeared. No one knows what really happened, but our father, he always blamed the Maliks. He said they killed his brother. That's why he swore no Khan would ever mix with their blood again. Adil's mind spun. His uncle? A forbidden love story that ended in death? His chest tightened as the realization sank in. History was repeating itself. He and Sanaa were trapped in the same cycle that had destroyed their families decades ago. But how do you know this? Adil pressed. Abba never told us. Hina's eyes flickered with guilt. I overheard him once. Late at night. He was speaking to Ami. He swore her to silence, said the children must never know. But I couldn't forget his words. He said, if Adil ever follows in my brother's footsteps, I'll bury him myself. The words hit Adil like a thunderclap. So this was why his father's rage had been so absolute. To Rashid, Adil was not just choosing love, he was repeating the tragedy that had already taken one brother away. Adil stood slowly, his fists trembling. Then that is the truth Abba doesn't want me to know. He is blinded by the past. But Hina, I am not my uncle. And Sana is not that girl. We can change this ending.
Hina wiped her tears, her voice shaky.
Bye. I want to believe you.
But if Abba is right, if the Maliks really were involved, then you are walking into danger much bigger than you realize. Adil looked out toward the street, where the sun was beginning to dip low, casting long shadows across the bazaar.
Danger or not, he knew one thing for certain: he could not abandon Sana. Not now, not ever. He turned back to Hina. Thank you for telling me.
But I need to find her before it's too late.
Hina's hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve. Wait. Don't go to their house. They will be watching. If they catch you, they won't let you leave alive.
Adil hesitated. His sister's fear was real, her words heavy with truth. But then his phone buzzed in his pocket.
He pulled it out. It was a message from an unknown number. Just one line.
If you want to see Sana again, come to the old Haveli near Ravi River.
Tonight. Alone. Adil's stomach tightened. He read the words again, his pulse quickening.
It wasn't signed, but he knew it had to be connected to the Maliks.
He showed the message to Hina.
Her face drained of color.
No, bye. Don't go. It's a trap.
Adil's jaw set.
Maybe. But it's also the only chance I have. I can't ignore it. Hina shook her head, gripping his arm desperately. Then at least let me come with you.
No, his voice was gentle but firm.
You've already risked enough. If something happens to me, you must be the one to tell Ami the truth.
Tell her I never betrayed this family, I only followed my heart.
Tears filled Hina's eyes again, but she nodded reluctantly.
She pressed her forehead against his arm, whispering, Allah protect you, bye. As night fell, Adil made his way toward the old Haveli by the river.
The streets grew quieter, shadows stretching long and dark across the ground.
The Haveli loomed ahead, an abandoned mansion with broken windows and crumbling walls, a relic of another age. It stood like a ghost against the moonlit sky, its silence heavy with secrets.
Adil's footsteps echoed on the stone path as he pushed open the creaking gate. The courtyard was empty, littered with fallen leaves.
He stepped inside, his heart thundering in his chest.
Sana, he called softly.
His voice bounced against the walls.
Are you here?
A faint sound answered him, a whisper, a sob.
He turned sharply toward the inner hall.
And there she was.
Sana.
Her hands bound with rope, her face pale, her eyes wide with both relief and terror when they landed on him.
Adil, she cried, her voice muffled with fear. No. You shouldn't have come.
Before he could rush forward, the doors slammed shut behind him. Heavy bolts locked into place. And from the shadows, figures began to emerge.
1, 2, 3, 4. All Malik men.
Their faces hard, their eyes burning with hatred. And in the center of them all, leaning on his cane but with fury radiating from every line of his body, was Malik Sahib. Adil's breath caught in his throat. The trap had closed. Malik Sahib's voice rang out, cold and merciless.
You dare defy me, boy? You dare step into my house after stealing my granddaughter's heart?
Tonight, the blood feud ends.
And it ends with you.
The air inside the Haveli was thick with dust, shadows dancing across cracked walls lit by a single lantern swaying from a rusted hook. The silence was suffocating, broken only by Sana's muffled sobs and the shuffle of heavy boots as Malik men closed in around Adil. Adil's breath came fast, but his eyes never left Sana. Her wrists were tied with coarse rope, her face streaked with tears, but even then, her gaze was fixed on him with fierce determination. She shook her head frantically as if to warn him, don't fight. Don't make it worse. But how could he stand still while they held her prisoner? Malik Sahib stepped forward, leaning on his cane but radiating an authority that demanded obedience. His white beard glowed faintly in the lantern light, but there was nothing soft about him. His eyes were sharp, unyielding, cold. You should have stayed away, boy, Malik Sahib said, his voice carrying the weight of generations.
I gave you your chance in the bazaar. You defied me.
And now you stand in my house, daring to claim what is mine.
Tell me, Adil Khan, what do you think should be done with you?
Adil's fists clenched. His voice, though steady, carried the crackle of anger.
Do whatever you want to me. But let Sana go. She's not your prisoner.
One of the Malik men laughed harshly.
Prisoner? She is family. And family obeys. Sana cried out, Dadaji, please. You don't understand. I love him. This isn't dishonor, it's truth. Please, let us be.
Her words echoed against the stone walls, raw and desperate, but Malik Sahib's face remained unmoved. He raised his cane, pointing it at her.
You shame me with every breath, Sana. You carry Malik blood, and yet you throw it away for a Khan. Do you not know what their family did to ours? Do you not remember that their betrayal cost your aunt her life?
Adil's heart lurched.
Her aunt? This was the first time he had heard any detail of the tragedy.
He stepped forward, his eyes narrowing.
What are you talking about? Adil demanded. What happened to her? Tell me the truth. The Malik men stiffened, surprised by his audacity.
Malik Sahib's gaze flickered, the weight of old memories passing over his face, but he quickly masked it with rage.
You dare question me, boy? You dare speak of things buried long before your birth?
His cane struck the ground with a sharp crack. The Khans destroyed a Malik daughter.
And for that, I will never forgive.
Adil's blood boiled. His father had painted the Maliks as murderers. Malik Sahib painted the Khans as destroyers.
Both sides drenched in blame, both carrying wounds.
And yet he and Sana were being punished for sins they never committed.
Then let us break the curse. Adil shouted. Why must the children pay for the mistakes of the dead? Why must love be chained by hatred?
For the first time, silence fell heavy. Even the Malik men hesitated, their eyes shifting to their leader.
Sana's tears slowed as hope flickered in her gaze.
But Malik Sahib's voice cut through like thunder.
Because blood remembers.
He motioned with his cane.
The men stepped forward.
Adil braced himself, fists clenched, heart pounding. He was outnumbered, surrounded, but he would not cower. He lunged at the first man, his fist connecting with the jaw. The man stumbled, crashing into a broken chair.
Another swung at Adil, but he ducked, driving his elbow into the attacker's ribs.
Sana screamed, struggling against her bonds.
Adil!
The fight was chaos, boots thudding, fists striking, lantern light swinging wildly.
Adil moved with desperation, his body fueled by adrenaline. He landed blows, took hits, stumbled but never fell.
Yet the numbers were against him. A heavy fist crashed into his side, knocking the wind out of him. Another grabbed his arms, pinning him. He struggled, but the men were too strong. His knees hit the ground.
Blood dripped from his lip onto the dusty floor.
Malik Sahib stepped closer, looming over him.
Bravery does not change destiny.
You will leave here tonight with nothing but pain and perhaps not even your life. Sana sobbed, her voice breaking.
Please, Dadaji. Don't kill him. I'll do whatever you want, I'll obey you, but please don't hurt him. Her words struck like daggers in Adil's chest.
She was bargaining her freedom to save him. He shook his head weakly, his voice hoarse.
No, Sana, don't. But Malik Sahib raised his cane, ready to strike Adil down. And then,
the doors of the Haveli burst open with a deafening crash.
Everyone froze.
Figures stormed in 3, 4, 5 of them, faces covered, moving swiftly with purpose. In their hands were iron rods and wooden sticks. Their voices rang out, sharp and urgent.
Let him go.
The Malik men spun in confusion.
Malik Sahib barked orders, but the intruders were quick, striking hard, forcing space between Adil and his captors.
One of them slashed the ropes binding Sana, pulling her to her feet.
Adil staggered to his feet, blinking through the haze of blood in shock. One of the rescuers shoved an iron rod into his hands. "Fight back, bye." He didn't recognize the man's face beneath the scarf, but his eyes burned with loyalty. The room erupted in chaos again: shouts, clashes, fists, the sound of wood against bone. Adil swung the rod with all his might, driving attackers back. Sana clung to him, her face pale but alive. "Who are they?" she cried over the noise. "I don't know," Adil shouted, his body moving on instinct. "But they're helping us." Within minutes, the Malik men were overpowered. One by one, they stumbled back, nursing bruises and cuts. Malik Sahib, furious but helpless, raised his cane, shouting, "Cowards! Hiding your faces! Do you think this changes anything? This feud will never end." But the rescuers ignored him. One of them grabbed Adil's arm, urging him toward the door. "Come, bye. Take her and go. Before more arrive." Adil hesitated only long enough to glance at Sana. Her eyes pleaded with him. Together, they ran, following the strangers out into the night. The cold air of the riverside hit their faces as they escaped into the darkness. Behind them, the Haveli loomed like a wounded beast, Malik Sahib's furious shouts echoing into the night. They didn't stop running until they reached a secluded grove of trees near the water. Finally, gasping for breath, Adil and Sana collapsed against a tree trunk. The rescuers stood around them, lowering their scarves. And when Adil saw the face of the man who had handed him the rod, his breath caught in his throat. It was Bilal, his cousin. "Bilal?" Adil's voice was stunned. "What are you doing here?" Bilal gave a small, grim smile. "Saving you from your own madness, bye. And from the Maliks." Sana's eyes widened. You knew?" Bilal nodded. "I've known for weeks. I saw you two together. I kept silent because I knew what would happen if Abba or your Abba found out. But tonight, when I heard you'd been lured to the Haveli, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I gathered some friends. We came for you." Adil's heart swelled with both relief and confusion. "You risked everything." Bilal's expression darkened. "Not just for you. For all of us. Because there's something you don't know. Something about that old story of our uncle and the Malik girl." Adil's breath caught. He leaned closer. "What do you mean?" "Hina told me." Bilal interrupted, his eyes sharp. "Hina doesn't know the whole truth. None of you do. I found something, papers, letters, hidden in Dada G's old trunk. And what I read, it changes everything we were told." Adil's pulse quickened. "What truth, Bilal? Tell me." Bilal glanced at Sana, then back at Adil, his jaw tightening. "The Malik girl, your Sana's aunt, she didn't just disappear. She didn't die by accident. She was betrayed. And not by her family." Adil's blood ran cold. His voice was barely a whisper. "Then who?" Bilal's eyes locked on him, the words heavy with revelation. "By someone from ours." The night air carried the scent of the river, damp and sharp, mixing with the sweat and blood still clinging to Adil's skin. He sat beneath the tree, Sana leaning against him for strength, her trembling fingers locked with his. Across from them, Bilal crouched low, the flickering light of a single lantern casting deep shadows across his face. His friends, silent boys from the neighborhood who had fought like lions in the Haveli, kept watch, scanning the darkness for any sign of Malik men. But it was Bilal's words that froze Adil's heart. She was betrayed. And not by the Maliks. By someone from our family. Adil stared at him, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. That's not possible. Our family always said the Maliks were the ones to blame. That their cruelty. Bilal raised a hand, cutting him off. His eyes glimmered with the weight of what he carried. That's what they wanted us to believe. That's what they made sure everyone believed. But the truth was hidden, locked away in Dada G's old trunk. I found it last year, in the storeroom where no one goes. Letters, Adil. Handwritten letters from the Malik girl herself.
Sana gasped, her lips parting as her voice broke. My Kala? You found her letters? Bilal nodded slowly. Yes. And in those letters, she wrote about her love for our uncle, your father's younger brother. She trusted him. She believed he would fight for her. But in her last letter, Bilal's voice grew heavy, his throat tightening. She wrote that she had been betrayed by the very man she loved. She said he gave her name to her own family to protect his honor. He abandoned her. The world seemed to tilt. Adil's mind reeled. He shook his head violently. No. No, Bilal. That can't be true. My father told me his brother died defending her. That he was martyred for love. Bilal's jaw clenched. That's the story they fed us to keep the honor of the Khan name intact. But the letters don't lie. He betrayed her, Adil. He didn't die for her. He left her to be dragged back to the Haveli by her own blood. And she, his voice faltered, eyes falling to the ground. She never made it out alive. Sana's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her whole body trembling. So all these years, my family cursed the Khans, and your family cursed mine, when in truth, it was the cowardice of one man? The grove fell silent, broken only by the rustle of leaves. Adil's fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. Rage surged through him, rage at the lies, the generations of hatred built on falsehood, the cruel legacy that shackled them. But beneath the rage was something heavier. A crushing weight pressing against his chest. My father, Adil whispered. His voice cracked like dry wood. He must have known. He told me stories. He always said we were wronged, that the Maliks were merciless. But if his own brother was the betrayer, then he has lied to me. To all of us. Bilal's gaze softened, but his words remained sharp. He knew, Adil. He hid it. Because sometimes pride is stronger than love. He couldn't let the world think a Khan betrayed his beloved. So he changed the story. And that lie became our truth. Sana buried her face in her hands. Her sobs tore through the night, raw and broken. Adil pulled her close, his own tears burning at the corners of his eyes though he fought them back. For a long time, none of them spoke. The lantern crackled faintly, insects hummed, and the river whispered in the dark. Finally, Adil lifted his head, his voice trembling with both fury and resolve. If this is true, Bilal, then everything changes. We cannot keep living under their lies. We cannot let this feud destroy us when it was built on betrayal. Bilal nodded, leaning closer. That's why I brought you out here. Because you and Sana, you're not just fighting for love anymore. You're fighting to end a curse of hatred. But if the elders find out I've told you this, if they learn I touched those letters. Adil cut him off, his eyes burning with defiance. Then let them. I will not let their pride dictate my future. I will not let them use us as pawns in their false war. Sana lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice weak but steady. Adil, if we tell them, if we expose this truth, do you think they'll believe us? Or will they silence us to protect their honor again? Her question hung in the air like a blade. Bilal's friends shifted uneasily. One of them, a boy named Rahim, whispered, if the Maliks and Khans both hear of this, they won't thank you. They'll hunt you. Both sides will want to erase the shame. Bilal nodded grimly. He's right. Truth is dangerous, sometimes more dangerous than lies. Adil tightened his arm around Sana, his voice low but unwavering. Then let it be dangerous. I would rather die for truth than live under deception. The words struck deep. Even Bilal's hardened expression flickered with admiration. But before anyone could respond, a sound split the night. Hooves. Distant at first, then closer. The pounding of horses against dirt, echoing like war drums. Bilal leapt to his feet, signaling his friends. They've tracked us. Malik men, they won't stop until they find you. Sana stiffened in Adil's arms. No, not again. Adil rose quickly, gripping the iron rod still slick with blood. His body screamed with exhaustion, but his spirit roared with defiance.
Bilal's eyes darted to him. We can't fight them here. Too open. We need to move, now.
The group scattered into the shadows, running along the riverside, hearts hammering with every thunderous beat of hooves behind them. The lantern was extinguished, leaving only moonlight to guide their path.
Adil pulled Sana along, whispering between gasps. Stay close. Don't let go.
She clung to him, her breath ragged, her faith burning through the terror in her eyes. Behind them, shouts erupted, Malik voices calling, orders barked, the hunt closing in. Bilal led them through a narrow path of reeds and low branches, their bodies scraping, lungs burning, feet pounding the earth. The sound of water grew louder until suddenly the river opened before them, glimmering silver under the moon.
Bilal spun around. They're almost here. We can't outrun them. We'll have to cross.
Adil looked at the rushing current, his heart lurching. The river was swollen from the last rains, dark and fierce. To step into it now was to gamble with their lives.
Sana's voice quivered. Adil, it's too strong. We'll drown.
But Adil gripped her shoulders firmly, his eyes locking onto hers.
Better to face the river than the chains of your grandfather. Trust me, Sana. Trust me.
Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Without hesitation, Adil plunged into the icy water, pulling her with him.
The current roared around them, dragging, pulling, threatening to consume.
Bilal and his friends followed, their shouts drowned by the crashing of waves. On the far bank, the Malik men reined their horses, their lanterns swinging wildly. They shouted threats into the darkness, but none dared enter the raging water.
The current tossed Adil under.
Water filled his mouth, his chest burning as he fought to resurface. He clung to Sana, kicking furiously, his muscles screaming with every stroke.
Adil, she cried, choking on river spray. I've got you, he gasped, hauling her against him.
Inch by inch, stroke by stroke, they fought the river's fury. At last, their feet found solid ground. They staggered onto the far bank, collapsing in the mud, coughing and shivering, but alive.
Bilal and his friends stumbled out beside them, gasping for breath.
On the opposite shore, the Malik men cursed, their voices fading as distance and water swallowed them.
For now, they were safe.
But as Adil held Sana close, her body trembling violently in his arms, he knew safety was only an illusion. Because now, with the truth of betrayal burning in his mind and the Maliks furious at their escape, they were hunted by both fate and blood. And in the darkness of the night, Adil realized with chilling certainty.
This was only the beginning.
The river still roared behind them, its fury echoing in their ears as they huddled on the muddy bank, soaked to the bone, teeth chattering in the cold night air. Adil clutched Sana against his chest, his body trembling as much from the weight of what Bilal had revealed as from the icy water. Her hair clung to her face in wet strands, her lips pale, but her eyes, those eyes, still burned with unshakable trust. Bilal crouched nearby, wringing water from his clothes, his face tight with urgency. His friends, though exhausted, kept their ears tuned to the sounds of the opposite shore.
Lanterns still flickered faintly in the distance, Malik men shouting curses, their voices growing weaker as they realized the fugitives had escaped. For now.
Bilal turned to Adil.
We can't stay here.
They'll search the riverbanks until morning. We need shelter, somewhere hidden. Adil nodded, his jaw set.
Where?
A faint smile tugged at the corner of Bilal's lips, humorless but determined. There's an old brick kiln a mile from here.
Abandoned for years.
Only the poorest kids dare play near it.
It will hide us until sunrise.
With no other choice, they rose again, bodies aching, legs heavy. The path was rough, tangled with thorns and broken stones, but they pressed forward, driven by desperation. Adil never loosened his grip on Sana's hand, every step a promise that he would never let her be taken again. By the time they reached the kiln, the sky was paling faintly with the first hints of dawn. The structure loomed like a dark skeleton, crumbling walls jagged against the horizon, its chimney leaning like a giant scarred finger pointing at the heavens. Inside, the air was dry, thick with the smell of clay and dust, but at least it was shelter. They sank onto the floor,
coughing from exhaustion, shivering in the dim light. Bilal lit a small fire with scraps of wood, its glow flickering against the cracked bricks. For a long while, they said nothing, each lost in their own storm of thoughts. Sana sat pressed close to Adil, her head against his shoulder, her fingers twisting nervously in the folds of his shirt. Bilal stared into the fire, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed by the burden of secrets. Finally, Adil broke the silence. His voice was low, rough. "Tell me everything, Bilal. No more half-truths. No more pieces. What did you read in those letters?" Bilal didn't look up. He poked at the fire with a stick, sparks rising like restless spirits. "You really want to know, Bai? Once you hear it, there's no going back. You'll never see our family the same way again." Adil's voice hardened. "After tonight, I don't think I could ever see them the same way anyway." "Speak." Sana lifted her face, her eyes red from tears but steady with courage. "Please, Bilal. For both of us. Tell us the truth." Bilal drew in a long breath, as though steadying himself against the weight of memory. Then he began. The letters started simple. "Your uncle, the one Abba always called the martyr of love, and Sana's Kala wrote about stolen meetings, whispered promises, dreams of a life together. She trusted him more than anyone. She believed he would defy the feud for her." His eyes flickered toward Sana, then back to the fire. "But as the letters went on, I noticed a change. She began to worry. She wrote that your uncle had grown distant. That he avoided her eyes. That he spoke of honor, of family reputation. She begged him not to abandon her, not to let the feud poison their love. But in the last letter, Bilal's voice cracked slightly. She wrote that he had confessed to her. That he had told her family where she planned to run, all because he feared being shamed in front of the Khans. He thought giving her up would save his own honor." Sana's breath hitched, tears welling again. Her voice trembled. "And after that?" Bilal's jaw tightened. "After that, there were no more letters. Just silence. She never wrote again. I don't know if her family locked her away or if something worse happened. But it was clear she was betrayed by him. By our blood." The kiln fell silent, the fire crackling softly, shadows dancing against their weary faces. Adil's hands trembled with rage. His chest heaved as though each breath was a battle. "All my life," he whispered, his voice raw, "I believed we were the victims. I believed our uncle was a hero, murdered by the Maliks. I worshipped his memory. And all this time, he was a coward. A traitor to love." Sana gripped his arm, her voice fierce despite her tears. "No, Adil. He doesn't define you. His cowardice doesn't erase your courage. You came for me when no one else would. You fought for me when even I lost hope. Don't let his shadow break you." Her words struck deep, like light piercing the fog of despair. Adil turned to her, his eyes softening as he cupped her face gently. "I will never betray you, Sana. Not even if the whole world turns against us." Their foreheads touched, a moment of fragile peace in the ruins of their lives. Bilal cleared his throat, his expression grim. "There's more." Both Adil and Sana looked up sharply. Bilal hesitated, then lowered his voice. "I think Abba, your father, Adil, knew everything. He found those letters first, long ago. He burned some of them. I only found the ones he overlooked. That's why the story was twisted, why the feud was passed down with so much venom. He couldn't bear the shame. So he gave us a lie." The words cut like a blade. Adil staggered back, his heart pounding. "My father lied to me?" Bilal nodded slowly. "Yes. He lied to all of us. To protect the Khan name." Adil pressed his fists into the dirt, his mind spinning. Memories of his father's stern voice, his harsh warnings about the Maliks, his obsession with honor, it all unraveled now, exposed as hollow, poisoned by fear. Sana whispered, almost to herself. "So both families have lived in hatred for nothing. For a coward's betrayal. For a lie.
Her voice cracked with sorrow, but beneath it was a quiet fire. A fire that matched Adil's. He rose to his feet, fists clenched, his voice trembling but fierce. Then we will end it. No more lies. No more curses. Sana, Bilal, we will bring this truth into the light, even if it destroys everything. Bilal stood too, his eyes flashing with both admiration and worry. Careful, Bai. If you challenge them with this truth, both families will turn on you. They will say you're defaming the dead, disgracing the elders. They may even come for your lives. Adil met his cousin's gaze, unflinching. Then let them come. I'm not afraid anymore. Sana rose beside him, her hands slipping into his. Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of steel. And I will stand with him. Always. The fire crackled louder, casting their shadows tall against the crumbling walls. For a moment, they looked less like fugitives and more like warriors. But outside, the first rays of dawn painted the sky in pale gold. And with the light of morning would come pursuit angrier, fiercer, and more relentless than before. Because while Adil, Sana, and Bilal now carried the truth like a weapon, the families they were about to confront would not surrender easily. And somewhere deep in his heart, Adil knew. The real war was only about to begin. The first light of dawn crept into the kiln through cracks in the broken walls, painting faint stripes of gold across the dust and ash. Adil sat on the cold ground, Sana curled against him, her breathing finally even after hours of weeping. Bilal and his friends dozed lightly near the fire, their heads nodding, though one always kept an ear open for sounds outside. Adil's own eyes refused to close. His mind churned with the weight of what Bilal had revealed, the betrayal of his uncle, the silence of his father, the generations poisoned by a lie. Every breath felt heavier than the last, as if truth itself pressed against his chest. He stroked Sana's damp hair gently, whispering to himself, I will never be like him. Never. But the fragile peace of dawn shattered with the echo of boots. The sound was faint at first, crunching gravel outside, then louder, deliberate. A presence too confident to be Malik scouts, too direct to be hunters in the dark. Bilal stirred instantly, grabbing the iron rod still resting near his side. His friends jerked awake, eyes sharp with fear. Adil rose, every muscle tensing. He pushed Sana gently behind him. Stay back. The kiln entrance darkened as a figure appeared, tall and broad, backlit by the rising sun. For a moment, the light blinded them. But then the face came clear. It was Khan Sahib, Adil's father. His presence filled the ruined kiln as though the broken walls themselves bowed to him. His beard was streaked with gray, his eyes cold as iron. Behind him, two men, loyal retainers of the Khan household, stood like silent shadows, their hands resting on the hilts of long wooden staffs. Sana's breath caught in her throat. Bilal's grip tightened on his rod. But Adil felt the ground tremble beneath his feet, his heart crashing like a storm. Abba. The word was raw, half a whisper, half a plea. Khan Sahib's gaze swept the scene, pausing on Sana, then Bilal, then finally settling on his son. His lips curled in bitter disappointment. So it is true, he said, his voice deep, heavy with restrained fury. My blood, my own son, hiding in ruins with the enemy's granddaughter. Khan blood, tainted by Malik poison. Adil's throat burned. He stepped forward, his voice steady though his insides trembled. She is not poison. She is my life. Sana gasped softly, tears springing to her eyes, but she held his hand tightly. Khan Sahib's jaw tightened. Your life? Your life is Khan honor. Your life is the oath of our fathers, the dignity of our ancestors. And you, his voice thundered, reverberating off the kiln walls, you spit on it for a girl who carries the blood of traitors. Adil's hands clenched. No, Abba. It is our blood that betrayed. It was your brother who gave her Kala away. I know the truth now. Bilal told me. He found the letters. The kiln fell silent. Even the fire seemed to shrink under the weight of those words. Khan Sahib's eyes flickered, just for a moment. A shadow of recognition. A shadow of guilt. But it vanished beneath his mask of stone.
Lies, he snapped. Poison spread by the Maliks to break us. Bilal stepped forward, defiant. No, Abba.
I saw the letters with my own eyes.
Written in her hand.
She trusted your brother, and he betrayed her.
And you knew it. You hid it. The retainers shifted uneasily, glancing at their master. Khan Sahib's face darkened, veins standing out at his temple.
You dare accuse me, he roared at Bilal.
You dare spit on the grave of my brother? Adil's voice cracked through the tension, fierce and unyielding.
It's not spitting on his grave to speak the truth.
It's spitting on love to keep the lie alive.
For the first time, Khan Sahib's composure wavered. His nostrils flared, his fists trembled, but his eyes, those eyes, once the measure of Adil's world, burned with something darker than anger.
Fear. Fear of truth. Sana, trembling but brave, stepped forward.
Her voice was soft, respectful, but firm.
Khan Sahib, please. End this war.
It was never meant to be ours.
Don't punish us for sins that were not ours to carry.
But her plea only hardened him further. He pointed a trembling hand at her.
Silence.
You have bewitched my son, twisted his mind.
You will not speak in my presence.
Adil moved instantly, placing himself between them, his chest heaving.
If you raise your voice at her again, Abba, you will answer to me. The words struck like lightning.
Bilal's friends gasped.
Even Bilal looked stunned.
Khan Sahib's face turned to stone, the silence so heavy it seemed the kiln itself held its breath. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, his towering frame casting Adil into shadow.
You dare stand against me? Against your own father?
Adil's voice shook, but not with fear, with pain. I dare stand for what's right. I dare stand for truth.
Because the father I once respected is gone. You chose pride over honesty. You chose lies over love.
Khan Sahib's eyes glistened for the briefest moment, then hardened once more.
He raised his hand, striking Adil across the face with a force that sent him staggering. Sana cried out, rushing to him. Bilal surged forward, but the retainers blocked his path, staffs raised.
Adil touched the blood at his lip, staring at his father with a fire that no blow could extinguish.
You can strike me, Abba, he said hoarsely. But you cannot kill the truth. Khan Sahib's chest heaved, his breath ragged with rage. You are no son of mine.
The words fell like a blade, slicing through Adil's very soul. For a moment, his vision blurred, the world spinning. Sana's arms around him were the only thing that kept him standing. But before he could respond, Khan Sahib turned sharply, his cloak sweeping the dust. He barked at his retainers.
Come. Leave them to their ruin. They are dead to us. And with that, he was gone.
The sound of his footsteps faded into the dawn, leaving only the crackle of the dying fire and the broken hearts he left behind. Sana sobbed softly, her face pressed to Adil's chest. Bilal stood frozen, his jaw clenched, fury and grief warring in his eyes. Adil stared at the empty doorway, his father's final words echoing like thunder.
You are no son of mine.
The sentence carved itself into his heart, raw and bleeding. But beneath the pain, beneath the ashes of everything he had once believed, something new began to burn. Resolve. If he no longer had a father's name, he would carve his own.
If he no longer had a family's honor, he would build one with truth.
And if the world turned against him, he would still stand, with Sana at his side. But as he held her close, he knew one thing with chilling certainty. The war between truth and pride had only just begun. Morning broke over the Malik Haveli with the echo of restless footsteps. Servants rushed through the long corridors, their faces pale, their voices hushed. The usual rhythm of clattering pots and sweeping brooms was replaced by frantic whispers, Sana Bibi is missing. Malik Sahib stood in the center of the courtyard, his massive frame rigid with rage. His white kurta was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. A whip hung loosely from his hand, not for cattle, but as a reminder of his authority. His gaze swept over the trembling servants, each one shrinking under its weight.
Search every corner of the estate, he thundered. Check the orchards, the riverbank, the old wells. Bring her back to me. Do you hear me? Bring my daughter back.
His wife, Begum Nazreen, stood at the steps of the Haveli, her dupatta clutched tightly in her hands. Tears streaked her face, but she dared not speak against her husband in this storm of fury. Only one figure moved toward him with measured steps, Shahbaz Malik, his younger brother.
Bye, Shahbaz said calmly, though his eyes carried unease. Screaming at the servants will not bring her back. Sanaa has not been taken. She has chosen to leave.
Malik Sahib whirled on him, his face darkening.
Chosen? Chosen? My daughter does not choose. She obeys.
Shahbaz met his glare without flinching.
Then why is she gone?
The courtyard fell silent. Even the birds seemed to hush. Malik Sahib's nostrils flared, his jaw tightening, but words failed him.
Nazreen's voice broke through, trembling yet determined. She was restless last night.
I heard her weeping in her room. I tried to ask her what was wrong, but she said nothing.
Just hugged me and left before dawn.
Malik Sahib's grip tightened on the whip, his hand trembling with barely restrained violence.
And you let her, he roared. You let her walk out under my roof without stopping her?
Tears filled Nazreen's eyes, but her voice cracked with courage.
She is not a prisoner, Malik Sahib. She is our daughter. She has a heart.
And that heart is broken by this feud you feed with your pride. The words struck like sparks on dry grass.
Servants gasped. Shahbaz's eyes flickered with something almost like approval. But Malik Sahib's face twisted with wrath.
Do not lecture me on pride, woman, he shouted, the whip snapping in the air.
Our honor is all we have. Without it, we are nothing but dust under the Khan's feet.
And now, his voice broke, raw with fury, now my daughter has shamed me by running into the arms of our enemy. A gasp rippled through the crowd.
The servants looked at one another, shocked. Shahbaz's lips tightened into a grim line.
Yes, he said quietly. That is where she has gone.
With Adil Khan. The name hung heavy in the courtyard. Malik Sahib staggered back as if struck, his face drained of color.
For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then his roar shook the Haveli walls.
Adil Khan.
His voice was a thunderclap. The blood of our sworn enemies.
My daughter has gone with him? Nazreen covered her face with trembling hands.
Shahbaz nodded, his voice low, carrying a hint of sorrow.
I warned you, bye.
I told you your chains would only drive her further away.
Love is not broken by force.
It only burns brighter.
But Malik Sahib was deaf to wisdom.
He hurled the whip to the ground and pointed toward the gates.
Gather the men. Sharpen your blades. If the Khans think they can steal my daughter, they will taste Malik fury.
Today, we end this once and for all. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Loyal retainers rushed to obey, seizing rifles, swords, and sticks.
Horses were saddled, jeeps rolled out of the garage.
The air filled with the clamor of war, not against strangers, but against their own kin of the soil, the Khans.
Nazreen stumbled forward, clutching her husband's arm. No! Please, don't do this. Sanaa is not stolen. She chose him.
If you spill blood now, you will destroy her forever. But Malik Sahib tore his arm free, his face like stone.
Better she curse me than shame our name. Better she hate me than defile our blood.
Shahbaz's voice cut sharp.
And what of the truth, bye? What of what was done years ago? Do you think it will stay buried forever?
Malik Sahib froze, his eyes narrowing. Do not speak of that, he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. But Shahbaz stepped closer, his tone rising.
They know, bye. The Khans know.
Adil knows.
Bilal found the letters.
The truth will not die, no matter how much you try to choke it. The courtyard froze again, all ears straining. Malik Sahib's face paled, then twisted into something darker than rage, fear. Silence, he barked, striking Shahbaz across the face. The crack of palm on flesh echoed in the air. Shahbaz staggered, but his eyes held steady, burning with defiance. "You can strike me, Shahbaz said, his voice steady. "But you cannot strike the truth. The children will carry it, even if we do not. And if you march to war now, you march against their love and against God's justice." For a moment, Malik Sahib trembled, torn between rage and the haunting weight of his brother's words. His retainers shifted uneasily, unsure whether to advance or retreat. But then Malik Sahib raised his voice, raw with fury. "Enough! Prepare the men. If Adil Khan thinks he can steal what is mine, then by sunset the earth will drink Khan blood." The courtyard shook with his command. The retainers shouted in unison, loyalty drowning out doubt. Nazreen collapsed to the steps, sobbing. Shahbaz turned his face away, blood at his lip, but his eyes glimmered with a silent vow, "If you cannot stop this madness, then I will." As the Malik estate thundered with preparation for war, far away in the ruins of the kiln, Adil and Sana sat in fragile silence, unaware of the storm gathering at their backs. Adil still felt the sting of his father's rejection, the words "you are no son of mine" carved deep into his heart. Sana's hands trembled in his, her eyes red with fear. Neither of them knew that by nightfall, the fires of both houses would blaze, and the earth itself would decide whose blood would sanctify the truth. The sun sank low, bleeding red across the horizon as if warning the earth of the blood soon to follow. Dust clouds rose in the distance, carrying with them the sound of engines, hooves, and war cries. The Maliks were coming. At the edge of Khan territory, villagers paused their work in the fields, clutching sickles and hoes nervously. Mothers pulled children indoors, shutting wooden doors tight. Dogs barked wildly as the ground itself seemed to tremble beneath the march. Adil, standing atop the broken walls of the kiln, saw it first. A long line of jeeps and horses, banners of green fluttering, rifles glinting in the dying light. At their head rode Malik Sahib, his turban tied high, his face grim with fury. Behind him, men shouted, beating drums and raising blades. Adil's chest tightened. He turned to Sana, who stood below, her face pale, lips trembling. "They're coming," he whispered. Sana shook her head in disbelief, her voice breaking. "My father, he will not listen. He will kill you. He will kill us both." Bilal, clutching his iron rod, spat on the ground. "Then let him try. We have faced worse nights. We will not run like cowards." But Adil knew the truth. This wasn't just a hunt, it was war. And war did not spare love. He climbed down, taking Sana's hands in his. His eyes locked with hers, fierce and unyielding. "Listen to me. If they come for us, we stand together. If they try to tear us apart, we fight them not with blades, but with truth." Sana's tears spilled freely, but she nodded, her heart pounding with his. Before he could say more, Bilal's friend Yusuf ran in, breathless. "Adil! Khan men are gathering too. They've heard your father's call. Rifles, sticks, everything. They're heading to the border." The kiln filled with silence heavy as stone. Adil felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. Both families, both armies, converging because of him and Sana. Pride against pride. Blood against blood. For a moment, he thought of fleeing. Running into the hills, far from the madness of fathers. But he knew the truth, running would not end the feud. Only facing it could. He straightened, his voice low but firm. "Then we go too. If they are to fight, let them fight before our eyes. Let them see what they are destroying." Sana gasped. "Adil, no." But he silenced her gently, his forehead pressing against hers. "If I must choose between losing you or losing their pride, I will let their pride burn." They left the kiln together, hand in hand, the night rising around them like a dark veil. The border between Khan and Malik lands was little more than a dried riverbed, but tonight it burned with torches and rage. On one side, Khan Sahib stood tall, his rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes like cold steel. Around him, men shouted his name, lifting sticks and weapons high. On the other side, Malik Sahib sat astride his horse, whip in hand, his men raising drums and swords. The air vibrated with their chants, ancient hatred filling every shout. For a long moment, the two men glared across the divide, the silence before the storm stretching taut as a bowstring. Finally, Malik Sahib's voice cut through, thunderous and raw. "Khan! Where is my daughter? Where have you hidden her?" Khan Sahib's lip curled. "Your daughter? She is no prisoner here. If she is with us, it is by her own shameful choice." Rage flashed in Malik Sahib's eyes. He raised his whip high. "Lies! You lured her with your son's filth. Give her back, or by God, I will burn your lands tonight." Khan Sahib stepped forward, his rifle gleaming under torchlight. "You dare accuse me, Malik? You, whose own blood betrayed love years ago. Do not speak to me of honor." The crowd roared at the insult. Sticks clashed, swords rattled. At that very moment, voices rose from the darkness behind the Khan ranks. Heads turned. And there, walking slowly into the firelight, hand in hand, came Adil and Sanaa. Gasps rippled across both sides. Torches shook. Mothers covered children's eyes. Adil's voice rang out, strong and clear. "Stop! Stop this madness!" All eyes turned to him. His father's face blanched, his jaw tightening. Malik Sahib's nostrils flared, his hand gripping the reins so tightly his knuckles whitened. Sanaa stepped forward, her voice trembling but brave. "Please. No more blood. We chose each other. Not because of hatred. Because of love. If you kill each other tonight, you kill us too." Her words cut the night like a blade. For a heartbeat, silence held. Then Malik Sahib roared, his voice savage. "Sanaa! Come here at once. Leave that snake's hand or I will disown you this very night." Sanaa flinched, tears flooding her eyes, but her hand tightened in Adil's. Khan Sahib's voice followed, colder, sharper. "Adil! Let go of her. Come back to your family. Do not shame us further." Adil shook his head, his heart hammering in his chest. His voice cracked like thunder. "No. If family means lies, if honor means chains, then I want neither. My honor is her." The earth itself seemed to shudder at his defiance. A murmur rippled through the crowds, torn between outrage and awe. Some men lowered their weapons, uncertain. Others raised them higher, drunk on fury. Malik Sahib's face twisted with rage. He raised his whip, pointing it at Adil. "Then die with her," he bellowed. The Malik men surged forward, shouting. In an instant, the Khan side responded, rifles cracking in the air. The border erupted into chaos, sticks clashing, stones flying, screams tearing the night. Adil shielded Sanaa as a rock whizzed past her face. Bilal and Yusuf rushed forward, swinging their rods, trying to push back the tide. Flames from overturned torches licked at the dry grass, spreading smoke and fire. The first clash had begun. And above it all, Adil's voice echoed, raw and desperate, "Stop. Please. This fight is not ours." But no one listened. The feud had been unleashed, and it would not rest until blood soaked the earth. The night had turned into a battlefield. Torches burned like scattered stars across the riverbed, their flames swallowed by rising smoke. The crack of rifles tore through the air, followed by the dull thud of sticks and the clatter of swords. Shouts of rage and cries of pain blended into a storm that drowned all reason. Adil gripped Sanaa's hand so tightly her fingers went numb. He pulled her behind a broken wall of the riverbank as men surged past them, clashing in blind fury. Sparks leapt from blades, boots pounded the dirt, and the earth itself trembled with ancestral hate unleashed. "Adil!" Bilal's voice rang out from the chaos. He swung his iron rod with desperate precision, knocking aside a Malik man's stick before he could strike Yusuf. His forehead dripped blood, but his eyes blazed with fire. "Get her out of here. They'll kill you both." Adil shook his head fiercely. "If we run, the feud lives. If we stand, maybe it ends tonight." Sana clung to him, her face pale, streaked with tears and smoke.
But they don't hear you, Adil. They don't see us. They see only blood.
A stone flew past, grazing her arm.
She cried out, clutching the wound. Adil's chest burned with fury.
He stood tall, stepping into the open, his voice breaking like thunder.
Stop this madness. Enough.
For a heartbeat, some heads turned.
A few men faltered, recognizing his voice. But Malik Sahib, atop his horse, lashed his whip in the air, his voice raw with fury. Strike! Strike until no Khan breathes. Khan Sahib answered with equal venom. Do not yield an inch. Crush them.
The fighting surged harder, both sides blind to reason.
Adil's heart cracked. He pulled Sana close, whispering desperately. Stay behind me.
He picked up a discarded staff, his hands trembling, not with fear, but with sorrow. He did not want to fight his own blood, yet the storm gave him no choice. A Malik youth lunged at him, blade raised.
Adil blocked with the staff, the shock jarring his arms.
We are not your enemies, he shouted, pushing the boy back. But the youth only screamed and attacked again, rage blinding him.
Adil struck once, hard enough to disarm but not kill. The boy fell back, dazed. Sana's scream cut through the night.
Adil turned, just in time to see Malik Sahib's horse charge toward them.
Leave her, Adil. Malik Sahib roared, whip snapping through the air. Or I will trample you where you stand.
Sana froze, terror gripping her. Adil spread his arms, shielding her. His voice cracked with defiance.
Then trample me. But you will never tear her from me.
The horse thundered closer. Sana buried her face against his chest, sobbing. But before the whip could fall, another voice split the night.
Enough.
The word was sharp, commanding.
It cut through the roars and chaos like a blade through cloth.
For a moment, the battlefield stilled. It was Shahbaz Malik Shahbaz, the younger brother. He strode into the riverbed, his clothes dusty, his lips still swollen from Malik Sahib's earlier strike. But his eyes burned with conviction, his arms raised high. Stop this bloodshed. Stop it before more sons fall to the sins of their fathers. The fighters hesitated, confused. Malik Sahib pulled his horse back slightly, glaring at his brother. Shahbaz! Get out of the way before I ride you down too. But Shahbaz did not move. His voice rose, steady and strong. You call this honor? To slaughter neighbors? To tear apart children for a feud born of lies? The word lies hissed through the air, catching every ear. Whispers spread like fire. Men looked at one another, uncertain. Adil's heart leapt. Sana gripped his arm, her eyes wide with sudden hope. What lies? Someone shouted from the Malik side. What truth is this? Shahbaz's voice shook the night. The feud you fight for is no feud of honor, it is a betrayal. Years ago, it was not the Khans who wronged us, but our own blood. Letters prove it. My brother knows it. He hides it. The battlefield erupted in murmurs. Some men lowered their weapons. Khan Sahib's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. Malik Sahib's face turned pale, then purple with rage. Silence, he roared, his whip cracking. Do not poison them with your lies, Shahbaz. But Shahbaz stood firm, pointing directly at him. It was you, you who let our sisters' trust be broken. You who buried the truth to feed your pride. And now, because of that pride, you would spill rivers of blood. The crowd gasped. Men stepped back from Malik Sahib, doubt creeping into their eyes. Even his horse shifted uneasily beneath him. Adil seized the moment. He stepped forward, pulling Sana with him, his voice ringing out, "This feud has chained us long enough. The truth is clear, our parents betrayed love, not us. Why should we carry their sins? Why should we kill for their lies?" The battlefield wavered, torn between rage and revelation. Khan Sahib's face was grim, unreadable. But Malik Sahib trembled, fury battling fear. He raised his whip again, voice breaking,
Do not listen. He is bewitched. They all are. Strike, I command you, strike.
But his command no longer thundered.
It cracked, hollow, against ears no longer deaf.
Men looked at him not with devotion, but with doubt. Some even lowered their swords. The spell of hate had begun to crack.
Yet in the midst of it all, a shot rang out.
A rifle fired from somewhere in the crowd. The bullet tore through the smoke, striking flesh.
A cry of agony pierced the night. Sanaa screamed.
Adil turned, horror freezing his blood. Bilal staggered, clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers.
No!
Adil's voice shattered.
He rushed forward as Bilal collapsed into Yusuf's arms, gasping. Stay with me, bye. Stay with me.
The battlefield fell into stunned silence. The smoke curled around them, the fire crackled, but all eyes fixed on the wounded youth. Blood had been spilled. And with it, the fragile thread of peace snapped once more. The battlefield froze as Bilal crumpled to the ground, his hands pressed to his bleeding side.
His cries echoed through the smoke, sharper than any rifle shot.
For one breathless moment, even the clash of steel, the roar of men, the pounding of hooves, everything stopped. Adil dropped to his knees beside him, panic consuming him.
Bilal! No, stay with me. You'll be fine, just hold on.
Bilal's lips trembled, his breath shallow.
Adil, it burns. Don't let me die here.
Sanaa knelt on the other side, her trembling hands pressing against his wound.
Blood seeped through her fingers, hot and unrelenting.
Tears streamed down her face.
We need a healer now. Someone, please help him. But no one moved. Khan men stood frozen, watching their own bleed.
Malik men shifted uneasily, some lowering weapons, others still gripping them tightly, torn between pride and the shock of what they had seen.
Yusuf cried out, rage twisting his voice. He raised his fist to the crowd. Who fired? Who shot him? Show your face, coward. No answer came. The smoke curled thick, hiding faces, hiding guilt.
Somewhere in the shadows, the rifleman who had pulled the trigger melted back into anonymity. Adil's voice cracked with desperation.
Stop fighting.
Please, for God's sake, my brother is dying. He tore off his shawl, pressing it against the wound, his hands slick with blood. His heart hammered, his tears falling onto Bilal's pale face.
Stay awake, Bilal. Stay with me. You promised me we'd fight together, not like this. Not like this.
Bilal coughed, blood staining his lips. His eyes fluttered, then fixed on Adil with a faint, broken smile. I told you, you were stubborn, even more than me. He gasped, shuddering.
Don't let them, take her away. Promise me you'll fight, for truth. Adil's chest tore open with grief.
He pressed his forehead against his brother's.
I promise. I swear it. With every breath, I'll carry it. Sanaa sobbed beside him, whispering prayers through trembling lips.
Around them, the weight of silence grew unbearable. The warriors who had come to spill enemy blood now stood witness to their own youth bleeding out in the dirt. Shame rippled through the crowd, shame and fear. Khan Sahib's face remained rigid, but his eyes flickered an unspoken crack in his armor. Malik Sahib sat stiff on his horse, jaw tight, his whip trembling in his grip. It was Shabazz who moved first. He strode into the circle, his voice rising above the murmurs.
Do you see? This is what your pride brings.
A boy neither Khan nor Malik in this moment, but a son, a brother, a child of this soil, bleeding for nothing. His words rang like thunder.
Some men lowered their weapons completely. Others turned away, unable to meet his gaze.
Sanaa looked up, her voice trembling but sharp as a blade.
How many more must fall before you see the truth? How many sons must bleed before you bury this feud?
Her eyes locked on her father, pleading.
Abba, please. Look at him. Does his blood bring you honor? Malik Sahib's jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring. He avoided her gaze, staring instead at the horizon, as if the sky itself could excuse him. But his silence betrayed the crack forming inside. Adil rose slowly, his hands drenched in Bilal's blood, his face pale but his voice unshaken. Enough lies. Enough pride. My brother may die tonight, but I will not let his blood be wasted on your stubbornness. The truth will live, whether you accept it or not. He turned, pointing at both Khan Sahib and Malik Sahib. You call yourselves fathers, leaders, men of honor. But you are nothing more than prisoners of your own lies. If Bilal dies, his blood is on your hands, not mine, not Sanaa's, not the people's. Yours. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Never before had a son spoken with such fire to the men who ruled their world. Khan Sahib's face turned pale, his lips tightening. For the first time, his authority seemed shaken, brittle. Malik Sahib's hands trembled on the reins, rage burning in his eyes, but beneath it, the faint glimmer of doubt. Before either could answer, Bilal coughed again, his voice faint, fragile. Adil. Sanaa, don't let them break you. Promise me. His head sagged slightly, his breath shallow. Yusuf screamed his name, shaking him desperately. Adil pressed his brother's hand to his chest, tears streaming. I promise, Bilal. Whatever happens, I will not break. I will not bow to lies. The night grew heavier, every man weighed down by what they had seen. Shabazz lifted his hands once more, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. You came for blood, but tonight God has shown you what blood costs. Ask yourselves, how much more are you willing to pay? The men murmured. Some began to drift back, unwilling to fight further. Others still stood tense, but their resolve faltered. But Malik Sahib, desperate to hold the storm together, roared, Do not listen. This is weakness. They want to shame us into silence. He pointed his whip at Adil. Seize him. Seize the girl. End this filth once and for all. Yet for the first time, his men did not move. Their eyes lowered, their hands slackened. A dangerous silence fell. Adil stood, his brother's blood soaking his clothes, his voice steady and unyielding. You may command armies, Malik Sahib, but you cannot command hearts anymore. Not mine. Not hers. Not theirs. The torches flickered, the smoke swirled, and for one fragile moment, it seemed the feud might break under its own weight. But Bilal's faint moan reminded them all time was running out. His life hung by a thread. Adil's heart thundered as he turned to Sanaa and Yusuf. We have to move him now. Or we lose him. He looked out at both sides, his voice rising once more. If you still have any humanity left, then help me save my brother. The silence that followed Adil's plea was unbearable. Dozens of men, armed and fierce only moments ago, now stood like statues carved of doubt. Torches hissed in the damp night air, casting long shadows across faces that wrestled with shame, fear, and pride. Bilal groaned, his body trembling in his brother's arms. His blood was soaking through every cloth pressed against him. Sanaa's hands shook violently, crimson dripping down her wrists as she fought to hold the life inside him. Adil's voice cut through the paralysis. If you still have any mercy, then help me carry him. He's your blood too, Khan Sahib. He's your son. Khan Sahib's lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time in his life, the great patriarch looked small, his gaze darting between his wounded son and the dozens of eyes now judging him. Malik Sahib scowled, but his whip hung limp at his side. He wanted to bark an order, to crush this fragile rebellion, yet even he knew the truth, the crowd was no longer his weapon. The people had seen blood, and blood speaks louder than pride. It was Yusuf who broke the standstill. He dropped to his knees, shouting at the warriors around him. Are you men or cowards? Will you stand here watching my brother die? If you won't help, then get out of our way. His voice, raw and full of anguish, snapped some out of their trance. A few younger men, trembling with guilt, stepped forward. They glanced nervously at their elders before kneeling to lift Bilal. Careful, Adil urged, his own hands steadying Bilal's limp body. Sanaa tore a piece of her scarf,
binding it tightly around his wound, whispering prayers as she worked. The crowd parted slowly, like a tide pulling back. Torches lowered, weapons dropped into the dirt. The night no longer smelled of war, but of fear that the boy they carried might not see another dawn. As they moved toward the village, Adil caught Khan Sahib's eyes. For a brief second, he thought he saw tears forming in the old man's gaze, though his face hardened before anyone else could notice. Malik Sahib turned his horse away, his pride refusing to let him watch. The journey to the village was agony. Every step brought fresh cries from Bilal, every stumble felt like death knocking closer. Sana refused to leave his side, her hand pressed to his wound the entire way, whispering, "Stay with us, Bilal. Don't you dare leave us. Not like this." When they finally reached the village, chaos erupted. Mothers rushed from their doors, children clung to their fathers' legs, neighbors shouted for water, cloth, anything that could help. "Bring him inside," someone cried, and the group rushed Bilal into a mud-walled house. He was laid on a charpoy, his face pale, his breath shallow. Adil's chest heaved as he looked around desperately. "We need a healer. Where is the Hakim?" An old man stepped forward, his hands trembling as he carried a satchel. His face was grave. "I can try, but this wound is deep. The bullet must come out, or the bleeding won't stop." Sana's face blanched. "Then do it. Please, do whatever it takes." The Hakim shook his head slowly. "I need stillness, and strong light, and herbs I do not have. Without them, he may not survive the pain." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Adil, as if the choice were his alone. Adil gripped his brother's hand, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Bilal, can you hear me?" Bilal's eyelids fluttered. His lips moved faintly, barely whispering. "Don't, let me go." Adil's heart cracked open. He turned to Sana, voice breaking. "We can't lose him. There must be someone else, someone who can help." It was Sana who spoke what no one else dared. "There is one. Dr. Farouk. The town doctor." Gasps rippled through the room. Dr. Farouk was not from the Khans or the Maliks, he was an outsider, a man neither family trusted, for he treated both with equal hand. To call him would mean admitting their own traditions were powerless. But Adil didn't hesitate. "Then we go to him." Yusuf stepped forward instantly. "I'll come with you." Sana gripped Adil's arm. "It's dangerous. The roads are watched. If they catch us." Adil looked her in the eye, his voice firm. "If we do nothing, Bilal dies tonight. I will risk everything before I let that happen." The decision was made. They wrapped Bilal tightly in blankets, loading him onto a wooden cart. Yusuf held the reins, Adil and Sana walking beside, their eyes scanning every shadow as the wheels creaked through the sleeping village. The road to town was long and uneven, lined with trees that whispered in the wind. Every sound made Sana flinch, every rustle felt like danger. But Adil's hand never left the cart, his eyes fixed forward with a determination stronger than fear. As they approached the bridge, torchlight flared ahead. A group of men blocked the path, armed and stern. Their leader stepped forward, his face grim. "Where are you going at this hour?" Adil's chest tightened. He recognized them, men loyal to Malik Sahib. Yusuf tightened his grip on the reins, whispering, "What do we do?" Sana's heart pounded. If they told the truth, they'd be turned back. If they lied and were caught, worse could happen. Adil stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "My brother is dying. We're taking him to the doctor. If you have any humanity left, you won't stop us." The men exchanged uneasy glances. The leader's jaw tightened. Orders are orders. No one leaves without Malik Sahib's word. Sana stepped forward suddenly, her eyes blazing with fury. "Then tell your Malik Sahib this, if he lets Bilal die tonight, his own hands will be soaked with his blood. And every mother in this village will know who killed him." Her words struck like thunder. The men hesitated, shame flickering across their faces. One lowered his torch. Another muttered, "Let them pass." The leader's lips tightened, but he stepped aside.
Go. Before I change my mind. Relief washed over them as the cart rolled past.
Adil glanced at Sana, awe in his eyes. Her courage had broken through where his words might have failed. At last, they reached the town.
The doctor's clinic stood dark at the edge of the bazaar, its doors shut tight. Adil pounded on the wood. "Doctor! Open the door! Please!"
After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open. Dr. Farouk, a man with sharp eyes and a weary face, peered out. "What is this noise?" His words cut off when he saw Bilal on the cart.
"Dear God!"
He ushered them inside immediately, barking orders.
"Bring him to the table. Quickly! Sana, fetch water from the barrel. Yusuf, hold him steady. Adil, do not let go of his hand."
The room filled with urgency. Sana darted back and forth with bowls and cloth, Yusuf pressed down firmly on Bilal's shoulders, and Adil whispered desperately into his brother's ear. Dr. Farouk worked swiftly, his hands precise, his tools clinking under the lantern light. The air reeked of blood and smoke. Sana prayed under her breath, her tears dripping onto her hands as she worked. Then came the moment the bullet had to be removed.
Dr. Farouk looked at Adil. "Hold him tight.
If he wakes, he must not move." Adil nodded, gripping Bilal's hand so tightly his own knuckles turned white.
"Stay with me, Bilal. Don't give up now."
The doctor's scalpel gleamed under the lantern as it pierced flesh. Bilal screamed, his body arching in agony. Yusuf cried out, forcing him down, while Sana's sobs filled the room. Adil's voice broke as he shouted into his brother's ear.
"You're stronger than this. You fought for me, for us, fight now. Fight!"
The sound of metal clinked. The bullet rolled into a tray, bloodied and small.
Dr. Farouk worked quickly, stitching the wound with steady hands.
At last, he leaned back, his face drenched in sweat.
"It is done.
He has a chance, but only if he is kept warm, fed, and watched carefully. His will to live will decide the rest." Adil collapsed to his knees beside the table, clutching Bilal's limp hand, his tears flowing freely.
"Thank you. God bless you, doctor. Thank you."
Sana covered her face with trembling hands, whispering gratitude between sobs. Yusuf clung to his brother's other hand, refusing to let go. For the first time since the chaos began, there was a flicker of hope. But outside, shadows moved. Riders approached the town, torches in hand. The feud had followed them, and it would not rest until blood or truth prevailed.
Adil lifted his head, hearing the distant hoofbeats. His jaw tightened.
They had saved Bilal for now, but the war for their future was only beginning. The first rays of dawn crept into Dr. Farouk's clinic, painting the walls in muted gold. Bilal lay pale but breathing, his chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. His wound was bandaged, his lips dry, but life still clung to him like a stubborn flame refusing to die. Adil sat slumped in a chair beside him, his hand never leaving his brother's. His eyes were bloodshot, his face hollow from a night without rest. Every shallow breath Bilal took felt like a victory. Sana dozed against the wall, her scarf damp from tears, her fingers raw from hours of pressing cloth to blood. Yusuf paced restlessly near the window, his ears tuned to every distant sound. Dr. Farouk, weary but resolute, entered the room with a bowl of warm broth. His voice was calm but firm.
He must not be moved for days.
His body will fight infection, and it will not be easy.
You must be patient. Strong. Vigilant.
Adil's voice cracked with gratitude.
We owe you everything.
You saved him when no one else would. The doctor's expression hardened.
I saved him because I value life, Adil. But understand, your choice has consequences. The Khans and Maliks will not forgive that you brought him here. They will see it as betrayal. The words sank like stones. Sana's heart twisted with dread.
But what should we have done?
Let him die just to please their pride.
Dr. Farouk looked at her, his eyes filled with weary wisdom. You did what was right.
That is enough for your soul. But for them it will never be enough. Outside, the village stirred awake. Women fetched water, men led animals to fields, children chased chickens through the dirt lanes. But whispers already traveled faster than the morning wind. They carried Bilal Khan through the night. To the outsider doctor, imagine that. The families will never allow this shame to pass quietly. The gossip spread like wildfire, reaching ears that burned with anger and others that trembled with unease. By midday, the storm arrived. The heavy hooves of horses echoed through the bazaar. Men in Khan colors stormed toward the clinic, their torches blazing even in the daylight. Behind them came Malik men, summoned by curiosity or fury. It was no longer clear where loyalty ended and vengeance began. Adil looked up sharply as Yusuf burst into the room. They're coming. Both sides. You need to prepare yourself. Sanaa's hands flew to her mouth, fear choking her voice. They'll drag us out, they'll finish what they started. Adil rose, his legs unsteady but his spirit firm. He stood between the bed and the door, his body a shield. If they want to harm him, they'll have to go through me first. The clinic door burst open with a crack. Khan Sahib entered, his face thunder, his eyes fixed on the sight of his wounded son lying in a stranger's care. His men filled the doorway, tense and ready. Behind them, Malik Sahib arrived, whip in hand, his face twisted with triumph. So it's true. You delivered your own blood to an outsider. Have you no shame? Adil's chest rose and fell with anger. Shame? My shame would be letting my brother bleed to death because you both value pride over life. Khan Sahib's jaw tightened, his voice low and cutting. You defied me. You took my son, my blood, to this man, he spat the word, glaring at Dr. Farouk, without my word, without my permission. Adil's voice cracked but did not falter. Your permission? Did Bilal's life need your permission to be saved? Tell me, father, if it were you on that bed, would you prefer to die than admit someone outside your clan could save you? The words struck like fire. Murmurs rippled through the men outside. Sanaa stepped forward, her voice trembling but sharp. He lives because of courage, not cowardice. Because Adil chose truth over fear. If that is betrayal, then perhaps betrayal is better than blind pride. Malik Sahib snarled. And this is the girl you disgrace your house for? Bold tongue, poisoned words, she corrupts him, Khan Sahib. She will drag your family to ruin. Adil's fury exploded. He moved forward, standing chest to chest with Malik Sahib. Do not speak of her that way. She saved Bilal's life with her own hands while you stood idle with your whip. If anyone ruins families, it is you with your lies and your arrogance. Gasps filled the room. Never before had Adil spoken with such defiance, his voice echoing like a hammer against the old walls of tradition. For a long, heavy moment, Khan Sahib said nothing. His eyes darted to Bilal, then to Adil, then back to Bilal. His face betrayed something, a crack, a flicker of guilt, a whisper of love buried under years of pride. Malik Sahib, sensing his rival's hesitation, roared to his men. Seize them! Drag the boy and the girl out before the whole village. Let everyone see the price of treachery. The Malik men surged forward, but were stopped. It was Shabazz. He appeared at the door, his voice cutting like a blade. Enough! All eyes turned as he stepped into the room, his presence calm yet commanding. His gaze swept the chaos, his voice steady. Look at yourselves. Two great families, tearing apart not only each other but the very blood of your children. This boy breathes because these two had courage where you had only stubbornness. And you want to punish them? The silence that followed was deafening. Khan Sahib's lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes burning with unspoken conflict. Malik Sahib's fury twisted into frustration, for his men looked uncertain, their hands no longer eager to seize. Dr. Farouk stepped forward, his tone sharp. If you storm my clinic, you storm against life itself. Leave now, or you will answer not only to me, but to your own conscience. The men shifted uneasily. Torches lowered. Khan Sahib finally turned, his voice low but heavy. This is not over, Adil. You think courage gives you victory. But one act of defiance does not erase years of loyalty owed. He looked once at Bilal, his jaw trembling, before storming out. His men followed. Malik Sahib lingered, his eyes narrowing on Sana. You think you've won? This story is not finished. And when it ends, you will regret ever believing in love. He snapped his whip against the ground and departed with his men. The clinic grew quiet again, save for the faint sound of Bilal's breathing. Adil's hands shook, but his eyes burned with fire. They fear the truth. That's why they rage so loudly. But truth doesn't die, it only grows stronger. Sana touched his arm gently, her voice soft. You're changing things, Adil. But change never comes without a price. He looked at Bilal, his chest tight. Then I'll pay it. Whatever it takes. Outside, the village still buzzed with whispers. But now the whispers carried a new tone, not just fear, but wonder. For the first time, people were asking questions their fathers never dared ask. And questions, once asked, can never be silenced. Night fell heavy over the village, yet no one slept. From house to house, whispers spread like fire racing across dry fields. The story of Adil and Sana carrying Bilal to Dr. Farouk's clinic had shaken every family. Around cooking fires and under oil lamps, people asked the questions they once buried in silence. Would you have let your own son die just for pride? They saved him, didn't they? And yet their fathers call it betrayal. Perhaps what we call honor is just another name for chains. The words passed from tongue to tongue, growing sharper with each retelling. What had once been loyalty to clan and family began to taste bitter, like poison long swallowed without thought. Inside Dr. Farouk's dimly lit clinic, Adil sat beside Bilal, who still lay pale but breathing, his life clinging stubbornly. Sana sat nearby, gently wiping Bilal's forehead, whispering prayers. Yusuf leaned against the wall, his eyes restless, watching every flicker of shadow. The weight of the day pressed heavy on all of them, but in the silence they felt something stirring, something larger than themselves. Adil's voice broke softly. Do you hear them, outside? The whispers. They're talking about us. Sana lifted her gaze. Yes. And they're afraid. Afraid of what this means. Adil's jaw tightened. Good. Let them be afraid. Because fear means they're beginning to see the truth. Just then, the clinic door creaked open. Shabazz entered quietly, closing it behind him. His face was grave, but there was light in his eyes. They're losing control, he said simply. For the first time in decades, people are questioning them. They see Bilal's blood. They see your courage. And they ask themselves, who do they truly follow? Men bound to pride, or truth that saves lives? Adil looked down at his brother, then back at Shabazz. But if they turn to truth, the Khans and Maliks won't surrender. They'll fight harder. They'll destroy anyone who dares stand against them. Shabazz's lips curved into a faint smile. Perhaps. But they cannot silence everyone. When one voice rises, others follow. And soon a single voice becomes a crowd. Sana whispered, almost to herself. And a crowd becomes a movement. The words felt dangerous, but alive. Outside, the first sparks of that movement had already begun. That night, in small gatherings, villagers began to speak openly. One man said bitterly, I broke my back working Khan Sahib's fields, and he gave me nothing but debt. Yet his son bleeds, and he expects us to kill for him. A woman added, Malik Sahib took my brother's land after calling it his right. And now he dares call Adil's love dishonor? Another spat on the ground. If Adil is a traitor, then so am I. Because I would have done the same. It was as if a dam had cracked, the silence of generations giving way to voices long trapped. By morning, the rumble had reached both houses. Khan Sahib sat in his courtyard, surrounded by loyal elders. His face was stern, but worry lurked in the lines of his brow. They're speaking against us, one elder warned. Saying you abandoned your own son to death. Saying Adil is braver than you. Khan Sahib's hand trembled as he gripped his cane. They forget who I am. they forget what I built. Without me, this village would be nothing but dust. Another elder shifted uneasily. With respect, Sahib, perhaps they no longer believe one man should own their lives. The words stung like a slap. Khan Sahib's pride flared, but deep inside, fear gnawed him. He had ruled through respect and fear for decades, but what happens when fear no longer worked? Across the village, Malik Sahib fumed in his haveli. His men knelt before him, ashamed. They hesitate when I give orders, he raged. They question me in whispers. And all because of that boy, because of Adil. His brother-in-law tried to soothe him. It will pass. They are like sheep, they grumble but they obey. But Malik Sahib slammed his whip against the floor. No. This is different. Adil has infected them with madness. If we do not crush him soon, their whispers will turn into rebellion. Rebellion. The word echoed in the room like thunder. That evening, as the village gathered for prayers, the unthinkable happened. Instead of dispersing quietly, people lingered outside the mosque. They spoke not in hushed tones, but in voices firm and unafraid. A farmer declared, "We won't fight their wars anymore. No more blood for their pride." A young man shouted, "Adil was right. We have followed blind men for too long." An old woman cried, "If Bilal had died, would they have cared? No, they would have buried him beneath lies." The murmurs swelled into a wave of voices. For the first time, the village stood not as Khans or Maliks, but as people united in doubt, in courage, in anger. Adil, Sana, and Yusuf heard the noise from Dr. Farouk's clinic. They rushed outside, their eyes wide at the sight of the crowd. Men and women stood shoulder to shoulder, faces lit by lantern light, their voices rising together. Truth. 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 The chant shook the air. It was not perfect, not organized, but it was alive. Sana's hand gripped Adil's. Her eyes shimmered with tears. "They're standing with us." Adil felt his chest tighten, his heart thundering. He had dreamed of this moment but never believed it would come so soon. This is bigger than us now. But even as hope surged, danger loomed. From the distance came the thunder of hooves. Soldiers loyal to both families charged into the square, their torches blazing, their whips cracking. The crowd faltered, fear tugging at their courage. Children screamed, mothers pulled them close, men stepped back instinctively. Malik Sahib rode at the front, his whip raised high. "Disperse. Now. Or you will learn the price of rebellion." Behind him, Khan Sahib appeared too, his face stern, his eyes scanning the crowd. The villagers froze, torn between the fear of the past and the courage of the present. Adil stepped forward, his voice ringing out. "No. Do not run. Do not bow. Their power lives only because we kneel to it. Stand firm, and they cannot break us." The crowd trembled, but some lifted their chins. Others clenched their fists. The chant began again, weaker but rising. Truth. 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 Khan Sahib's face darkened. Malik Sahib roared. The soldiers raised their weapons. The night teetered on the edge of chaos, rebellion against tradition, truth against lies, courage against fear. And in the middle of it all, Adil and Sana stood side by side, holding their ground. The first clash had not yet fallen, but when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The night air quivered with tension. The crowd, once bound in whispers, now stood trembling between fear and courage. Torches flickered, casting long shadows across the square. Malik Sahib sat tall on his horse, his whip raised, his men armored with sticks and blades. Khan Sahib stood a few paces away, leaning on his cane, his eyes sweeping over the villagers with grim calculation. The chant of truth. Truth. Truth still echoed, but it faltered as the soldiers advanced. Women clutched their children. Old men bowed their heads. Young men shifted nervously, fists clenched but feet frozen. Adil stepped forward into the open space, his heart hammering like a war drum. Sana stood close behind, her face pale yet defiant.
Yusuf moved to his brother's side, jaw tight, ready to fight if he must.
Malik Sahib's voice rang out like thunder. You dare raise your voices against us? Against the families who fed you, sheltered you, ruled you for generations? You dare side with a traitor who spits on honor?
The villagers shuddered, but Adil's voice rose above their fear.
Honor is not killing your brother for pride. Honor is not chaining your daughter to misery. Honor is truth.
And tonight, the truth is that we will not bow anymore.
A gasp ran through the crowd. It was the first time anyone had ever spoken so boldly in front of both patriarchs. Malik Sahib's whip cracked through the air. Seize him!
The soldiers surged forward.
But something unexpected happened.
The villagers did not scatter.
Not all of them.
A handful of young men, farmers, laborers, sons of poor families, stepped in front of Adil, forming a human shield. Their voices shook, but they shouted together.
You'll go through us first. The crowd roared in shock. Malik Sahib's face contorted with rage. Then bleed with him.
He lashed his whip down, striking one of the boys across the shoulder. The boy stumbled but did not move aside. The soldiers clashed into the line, shoving and striking.
Wooden sticks met farm tools hastily raised in defense. Women screamed, children cried, and chaos erupted.
Adil grabbed a soldier's arm, twisted hard, and wrenched the stick away. Yusuf swung a broken branch, knocking another back. Sana pulled a terrified child out of the melee, shielding him with her own body.
Blood was spilled. Cries filled the night.
But still, the villagers did not run.
For the first time in living memory, they fought back. Khan Sahib stood watching, his face unreadable.
The sight of his son, standing with the villagers, fighting against men who once obeyed his command, it tore at him in ways he could not admit.
Malik Sahib, however, reveled in the violence. Break them! Break every last one, he shouted.
His soldiers, drunk on loyalty and fear, pressed harder.
Adil's voice rang out above the chaos. Stand together. Do not let them divide us.
The villagers clung to his words like lifelines. Shoulder to shoulder, they pushed back, their voices rising into a chant that drowned the crack of whips.
Truth. 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 The battle swayed like a tide.
Soldiers struck hard, but each time one villager fell, two more stepped in his place. Fear still gripped them, but now courage had roots.
Sana, clutching the child, screamed to the crowd, "This is what they call honor? Beating us, silencing us? Look with your own eyes."
Her words pierced the night like arrows.
Even some soldiers hesitated, their strikes faltering.
They looked at the faces before them, neighbors, friends, cousins, and doubt crept into their hearts.
Khan Sahib noticed it too. His lips pressed into a hard line.
He stepped forward, raising his cane, his voice booming.
Enough! The fighting slowed.
Even Malik Sahib's soldiers paused, uncertain whether to obey the older man's command.
Khan Sahib's gaze swept over the crowd.
His voice was heavy, yet sharp as steel.
You shame yourselves. All of you. Fighting like animals in the street. Is this the village we built? A farmer shouted back, trembling but unafraid. You built walls of fear, Sahib. Tonight, we break them.
The villagers murmured agreement, louder this time.
Malik Sahib snarled. Do not listen to this madness. Fear keeps order. Without fear, you are nothing but dust.
But the villagers no longer looked at him with submission.
Their eyes burned with something else, something dangerous.
Adil stood tall, breathing hard, blood on his arm but fire in his eyes. He looked at both men, his father, and his enemy's father.
You rule with fear.
We choose truth. And if you must kill us for it, then kill us. But know this, you cannot kill us all. The square fell silent. Even the torches seemed to flicker lower.
The villagers' eyes turned to Khan Sahib.
His jaw worked, his cane trembling in his hand. He had lived by pride all his life, but for the first time, he felt its weight as a burden. He saw his son, willing to die for truth, and he saw the people, his people, ready to follow him. And deep inside, a seed of doubt cracked open. But Malik Sahib was not ready to bend. His rage boiled over. He raised his whip again and screamed, "If Khan Sahib will not crush you, then I will." He spurred his horse forward, straight toward Adil. Gasps filled the night. Sanaa cried out his name. Yusuf lunged to shield him. The whip lashed down. And Adil caught it in his bare hand. Blood streaked his palm, but he held tight, yanking Malik Sahib forward off his horse. The old man crashed to the ground with a cry, his whip torn from his grip. The crowd erupted, their voices surging in triumph. For the first time, Malik Sahib looked small, weak, sprawled on the dirt before the people he once commanded. His soldiers faltered. Some dropped their weapons entirely. Others stepped back, unwilling to strike again. Adil stood over Malik Sahib, breathing hard, the whip clenched in his bleeding hand. His voice shook but carried like thunder. "This ends now. No more fear. No more lies. The people have spoken." The villagers roared in agreement. The chant returned, louder than ever, shaking the night itself. Truth. 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 Malik Sahib's eyes burned with hatred, but his power had cracked. His whip was gone. His soldiers hesitated. And the people no longer bowed. Khan Sahib turned away, hiding the storm in his eyes. He felt the ground shifting beneath him, the power he had clung to all his life slipping like sand through his fingers. The square had become something new, a battlefield, a courtroom, a place where the future was being born. But what kind of future? Would the two patriarchs yield, or would they strike back with fury greater than ever? The night held its breath, balanced on a knife's edge. And Adil knew one thing with certainty: the first clash had been fought. But the true war for freedom, for love, for truth, was only beginning. The square lay in ruins. Torches smoldered in the dirt, broken sticks and torn clothes scattered across the ground. The cries of the wounded carried softly in the night air. Yet above all, the echo of the chant still lingered in the villagers' hearts. Truth. 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 Adil stood with Sanaa and Yusuf, his hand bleeding where Malik Sahib's whip had cut him. The crowd pressed around them, faces glowing with newfound courage. For the first time, the people looked at him not as a son defying his family, but as a leader. Shabazz came forward, placing a hand on Adil's shoulder. "You did what no one else dared. Tonight, you tore the chains of silence." But Adil shook his head. "No. The people did it themselves. I only reminded them of what they already knew." Sanaa's hand tightened around his arm, her eyes bright with both pride and fear. "And now, they will never forget." Yet even as hope flickered, danger crept close. The fight had ended, but it was not victory. It was only the beginning. At the Haveli, Malik Sahib sat on the floor, his pride shattered, his body aching from the fall. His men stood in silence, their eyes lowered, too ashamed or too afraid to meet his gaze. His voice cracked with rage. "You watched me fall. You let that boy humiliate me." One soldier stammered, "Sahib, the people, they were too many." "Silence." Malik Sahib roared, his face purple with fury. "I will not be remembered as the man who lost to a boy. I will burn this village to the ground before I surrender." His brother-in-law leaned closer, speaking low. "You must be careful. The crowd grows restless. Even your own men hesitate." Malik Sahib's eyes narrowed. "Then I will turn them against him. If they see Adil not as a savior, but as a danger, they will beg me to destroy him." He smiled, a cold, bitter smile. "And I know exactly how." Across the village, Khan Sahib sat alone in his courtyard, the weight of silence pressing heavy on him. His cane rested beside him, forgotten. His thoughts swirled like storm clouds. He had watched his son seize the whip from Malik Sahib's hand. He had seen the villagers chant his son's name instead of his own. For decades, he had been the voice of power, the hand of authority. But tonight, he had felt the ground shift.
He whispered to himself, voice trembling, is this the end of me? Or, the beginning of him? A servant approached nervously. Sahib, the people whisper your name with shame. They say you stood idle while your son bled for them. Khan Sahib's jaw tightened. He dismissed the man, but the words pierced deeper than any weapon. For the first time, he felt the shadow of irrelevance creeping over him. And yet, deep inside, another voice spoke, one he buried for years. The voice of a father, not a ruler. The voice that asked, was Adil truly wrong? At Dr. Farooq's clinic, the villagers gathered to tend the wounded. Sana helped bandage a boy's arm while Yusuf carried water. Adil sat quietly by Bilal's bedside, watching his brother's chest rise and fall. Bilal's eyes fluttered open. Weak, but alive. Bye, his voice was hoarse. You saved me. Adil's throat tightened. No, Bilal. We all saved each other. But Bilal's eyes shifted, a flicker of fear in them. He grasped Adil's hand. You don't understand. They won't stop. Malik Sahib. Father, they will never let this stand. Adil nodded grimly. I know. That is why we must be ready. Outside, Shabazz spoke with a group of villagers. Tonight we fought back, but it is not enough. They will return, stronger, more cunning. We must stay united. The crowd murmured agreement. Hope glimmered in their eyes, but also unease. Unity was fragile, and fear was not so easily killed. And into that fragile hope, poison began to drip. The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Adil wants to be the new master. He seeks to rule us, not free us. He humiliated his own father, what will he do to us? At first, people dismissed them. But as the whispers grew, doubt crept in. In the marketplace, an old man muttered, we stood for him last night, but what if he only replaces them with himself? A woman added, he caught Malik Sahib's whip. Did you see how he raised it in the air? As if he enjoyed it. The seeds of distrust had been sown. Adil noticed it quickly. People still greeted him, but their eyes carried questions. Their voices wavered when they spoke his name. He confronted Shabazz. Someone is spreading lies. Shabazz's expression darkened. Malik Sahib's work. He knows he cannot crush you with force, so he poisons the people's minds instead. Sanat overheard and whispered, but how can they believe such things? They saw what you did. Adil's voice was heavy. Fear makes people forget. A single lie, repeated enough, can silence even the loudest truth. And then the betrayal revealed itself. That evening, as Adil spoke with a group of villagers, trying to calm their doubts, a voice rose sharply from the crowd. It was Tariq, the same man who once praised Adil for his courage. His face was twisted with anger now. Enough of your speeches, Adil. Tariq shouted. You claim to free us, but I see through you. You want to rule us in your father's place. Gasps spread through the people. Adil froze. That is not true, Tariq. You know my heart. But Tariq cut him off. I know you humiliated your father before the whole village. If you can betray him, you can betray us too. Murmurs rippled. Doubt spread like fire. Sana stepped forward, her voice sharp. Tariq, how dare you? You saw him risk his life for Bilal, for all of us. But Tariq sneered. And yet, Bilal lives in his house, not ours. Who can say what deals they make behind closed doors? Perhaps this is all a game between father and son. The villagers stirred uneasily. The poison was working. Adil's chest burned with anger, but he forced his voice steady. I do not want to rule. I only want truth. But if you cannot see that, then ask yourself, who benefits from these lies? Me, or the men who built their power on your chains? Some nodded, uncertain. Others frowned, unconvinced. Tariq's eyes glittered with something more than anger, fear, perhaps, or guilt. Later, Shabazz pulled Adil aside. His voice was grim. Tariq has been meeting secretly with Malik Sahib's men. He is the betrayer. He spreads their lies to break us from within.
Adil's fists clenched.
Betrayal cut deeper than any whip.
Sana whispered, if the people turn against you because of him, everything we built will fall.
Adil's gaze hardened.
Then we must expose the truth before it's too late.
But Malik Sahib was already smiling in his Haveli, listening to his informant report the growing doubts.
They question him now, the man said.
They no longer chant his name with certainty.
Malik Sahib leaned back, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes.
Good.
Let them tear him down themselves. When the time comes, I will not need to strike.
They will hand him to me.
He poured himself a cup of tea, his voice cold and certain. The boy may have won the first clash. But I will win the war, with shadows, with whispers, with betrayal.
That night, Adil stood once more in the square.
The people gathered hesitantly, their faces unsure. He felt the weight of their doubt pressing down on him like a mountain. He raised his voice, steady and clear.
You hear lies about me. That I want to be your master. That I will betray you. But ask yourselves, what have I done? Did I not bleed with you? Did I not stand between you and their whips? Did I not fight for my brother's life, and yours?
The people shifted, restless. Adil's voice grew stronger.
I do not want your obedience. I want your freedom. And freedom is not mine to give, it is yours to claim.
But if you choose to believe lies, then know this, you hand your chains back to the men who forged them. His words struck deep. Some lowered their eyes in shame. Others remained uncertain.
Tariq sneered in the back, whispering to those around him.
The battle was no longer only with whips and soldiers.
It was with fear, doubt, and betrayal. Adil looked at Sana, then at Yusuf, then back at the crowd.
His voice trembled but did not break. You must decide truth or lies, courage or fear.
But decide soon. Because they are coming again.
And this time, they will not stop until one of us is gone. The square fell silent. The villagers looked at one another, torn between loyalty and doubt. And in the shadows, Malik Sahib's men watched, waiting for the moment the people's resolve would crack. The true war was no longer at the gates, it was inside their hearts.
The days after the betrayal were heavy with suspicion.
The villagers no longer gathered with the same fire in their voices. Their chants of truth had softened into murmurs, as if fear had crept back into their bones.
Adil felt it every time he walked through the square.
Where once eyes followed him with admiration, now they flickered with doubt. Mothers still thanked him softly, children still smiled shyly, but behind them, men whispered, their faces hard.
Sana tried to encourage him.
They're afraid, that's all. Fear makes people weak, but it can also make them cling to lies.
Adil nodded, but in his heart, he wondered, how long before fear swallows their courage completely?
Meanwhile, Malik Sahib had not been idle. He had tasted humiliation at Adil's hands, and the bitterness of it burned like fire in his veins. His brother-in-law found him pacing his Haveli like a caged beast.
Your whispers spread, the brother-in-law said.
The villagers question Adil. But still, many remain with him.
Doubt is not enough. We need to break them.
Malik Sahib's lips curled into a smile, sharp and cruel.
Then we will break them.
Not with words this time, but with blood. The brother-in-law frowned.
Whose blood?
Malik Sahib leaned close, his voice a serpent's hiss.
Hers. The girl who dares defy me.
If Sana falls, their so-called love dies with her.
And Adil will drown in his own grief.
The villagers will scatter like frightened birds. The plan was monstrous. Even the brother-in-law hesitated, his throat tight. But Malik Sahib's eyes were wild with vengeance.
Send my men. Quietly. Tonight.
That evening, as the village grew still, Sana sat with Yusuf in Dr. Farouk's courtyard, preparing medicines for the wounded. Adil had gone to check on Bilal, leaving her for only a moment. The night was calm, the moon casting silver light across the rooftops. But in the silence lurked shadows. Figures moved swiftly through the alleys, their faces hidden, blades glinting faintly.
Malik Sahib's men. Yusuf sensed it first.
His hand froze as he poured water into a bowl. His eyes narrowed.
Something's wrong.
Before Sana could ask, a crash shattered the quiet. The door burst open. Men stormed in, their shouts filling the air. "Take her!" Sana screamed as hands grabbed her. She struggled, kicking and clawing, but they dragged her toward the door.
Yusuf leapt at them, striking with his fists.
He knocked one man to the ground, but another slammed him with the hilt of a blade. Yusuf staggered, blood trickling from his brow.
"Run, Sana," he shouted. But she couldn't.
Rough hands bound her arms. A cloth gag silenced her cry.
Adil arrived at that moment, hearing the chaos.
He saw Sana being dragged into the street, Yusuf bleeding, men fleeing into the night with their captive.
"No!"
Adil's roar tore through the night. He sprinted after them, his heart pounding, his vision red with fury. The villagers awoke at the noise, doors opening, faces peering out. Some cried out, "They've taken the girl." Others shrank back, fear holding them still. Adil chased the men through the alleys, his feet flying, his breath burning. But they vanished into the darkness, horses waiting to whisk them away. By the time he reached the edge of the fields, they were gone. He collapsed to his knees, his hands in his hair, his chest heaving.
"Sana!" The news spread like wildfire.
By dawn, every villager knew Malik Sahib had taken Sana. The people whispered in horror, but fear held them silent. Few dared to speak aloud what they thought, that if Malik Sahib had gone this far, nothing was safe. In the Haveli, Malik Sahib sat proudly, his face smug. Sana was locked in a dark room, her wrists bound. He stood over her, his voice dripping with venom.
"You thought you could defy me? You thought your love stronger than my will? Look at you now, helpless, weak. Soon, Adil will come for you.
And when he does, he will fall into my trap." Sana met his gaze, her eyes blazing despite her fear. She spat the gag from her mouth and whispered, "You may bind my hands, Malik Sahib, but you cannot bind truth. And truth will destroy you." He slapped her, his rage exploding.
"We'll see whose truth remains." At Khan Sahib's courtyard, Adil stood before his father, trembling with fury.
"They took her. Your ally, Malik Sahib, kidnapped Sana like a coward.
And will you stand by him?
Or will you stand as a father?"
Khan Sahib's face was torn.
His pride battled his blood, his authority battled his heart. The elders around him shifted uncomfortably.
Adil's voice broke, raw and desperate. "If you will not act, then I will.
I will storm his Haveli myself if I must." The words struck deep. Khan Sahib's hand trembled on his cane. He saw the fire in his son's eyes, the fire of youth, of courage, of love. And he saw his own reflection there, long buried under years of cold power. One elder whispered, "Sahib, if you stay silent now, the people will know. They will never forgive." Khan Sahib closed his eyes. For the first time, he felt the walls of his pride collapsing. He could no longer ignore the truth. He opened his eyes, voice heavy with a decision that shook even himself.
"Prepare the men.
We march to Malik Sahib's Haveli.
Tonight." Gasps rose around him.
Adil stared, stunned.
"Father, you." Khan Sahib raised a hand. "Do not mistake me. I do this not for your rebellion, not for your defiance.
I do this because Malik Sahib has broken even the code of honor I swore to uphold.
He has taken an innocent girl. That I cannot allow."
For the first time, Adil saw something more than pride in his father's eyes. He saw conflict.
He saw pain.
He saw the faint glimmer of a father fighting to emerge from the mask of a ruler. By evening, the village buzzed with whispers.
Khan Sahib's men prepared their weapons. Malik Sahib's men tightened their defenses. The people watched with bated breath, knowing the night ahead would decide everything.
Adil stood with Yusuf and Shabazz, his heart torn between fear and determination.
Sanaa was in Malik Sahib's hands. His father had finally chosen to stand against his old ally. The village trembled on the edge of war.
And somewhere in the dark, Sanaa sat bound but unbroken, whispering to herself, "Hold on, Adil.
Hold on. Truth will find me."
The air was thick with anticipation, the silence before a storm. And when the storm broke, it would shatter everything. The moon rose high, pale and cold, casting its silver light upon a village that no longer breathed with ease. Tonight was not like other nights. Tonight, silence had a weight. Dogs barked nervously in the alleys, lamps burned later than usual, and whispers carried farther than voices.
Everyone knew blood would spill before dawn.
In Khan Sahib's courtyard, men gathered with weapons in hand, old muskets, rifles passed down from fathers, even sticks and axes polished for battle. For years, those weapons had remained hidden, collecting dust. Tonight, they gleamed under the lanterns.
Adil stood among them, his chest heaving with restless energy.
He had tied a scarf around his head, his hands gripping the hilt of a dagger Yusuf had pressed into his palm.
For Sanaa, Yusuf had said, his voice firm despite the bandage on his brow. Shahbaz stood on Adil's other side, grim and ready.
"It will not be easy," he muttered.
"Malik Sahib has fortified the Haveli. His men are armed, ruthless.
But if your father leads, the people will not falter." Adil looked to the veranda, where Khan Sahib stood in his long robe, his face carved from stone. His cane tapped against the floor as he gazed at the men who waited on his word. He raised his hand.
Silence fell.
"Tonight," Khan Sahib said, his voice carrying across the courtyard, "we do not fight for pride, or land, or wealth.
We fight for honor.
Malik Sahib has broken the oldest code of our people, he has seized an innocent girl to bend a man's will.
This is a crime not against one, but against all. If we do nothing, then tomorrow, none of our daughters are safe. None of our homes are safe."
A murmur rippled through the crowd. The men straightened, anger sparking in their eyes.
Khan Sahib's gaze swept over them, lingering a moment on Adil.
His voice dropped, heavy with steel.
"We march now. Let no man falter. Let no man forget. Tonight, we reclaim what is ours." The men roared, their voices shaking the air.
Adil's heart surged. For the first time, his father's authority was not a chain but a weapon pointed at tyranny.
The march began. Torches lit the path, their flames dancing in the night.
The villagers followed behind, not warriors, but witnesses to history. Women clutched their children close, whispering prayers into their hair. Old men leaned on sticks, muttering that such a night had not been seen in decades. At the front, Khan Sahib strode with surprising strength, his cane striking the earth like a drumbeat. Adil walked beside him, the torchlight painting fire across his face. Yusuf and Shahbaz flanked them, eyes sharp, ears tuned to the silence of the night. As they neared the Haveli, the air grew tense.
Shadows moved on the high walls.
The iron gates loomed, barred shut. From within, the glint of rifles peeked through arrow slits.
Malik Sahib was ready.
A voice thundered from the ramparts.
"Khan Sahib, why do you come with torches and swords to my door?"
It was Malik Sahib himself. He stood tall on the wall, draped in black, his face twisted with mockery. Behind him, armed guards lined the battlements, their guns aimed downward. Khan Sahib stepped forward, his cane planted firmly in the dirt.
"Release the girl." Malik Sahib laughed, the sound echoing in the stillness. "The girl? You mean the witch who bewitched your son? The same girl who dares poison our honor with her rebellion?" "No, Khan Sahib.
She will remain here until Adil kneels before me, until he begs forgiveness, until he admits his love is a crime." A growl rose from the villagers, but Khan Sahib lifted his hand for silence. His voice boomed again, sharper this time.
"Do not test me, Malik Sahib. You have dishonored yourself.
Free her, and perhaps the people will still remember you as a man of standing. Refuse, and they will remember you only as a tyrant who fell in shame."
The two old allies stared at each other, years of brotherhood crumbling in that single gaze. Malik Sahib's smile faded.
His voice turned cold.
So, you choose your son over me. You choose weakness over loyalty. Then come, Khan Sahib. Test your fate against mine. He lifted his hand.
The gates groaned, swinging open. Armed men poured out like wolves unleashed. The storm had broken. The clash was thunder and fire. Torches flared as steel met steel, shouts rang into the night, and the ground shook with the stamp of feet.
Adil fought like a man possessed.
His dagger flashed, striking down one guard after another. He ducked, dodged, struck, every move fueled by one thought: find Sanaa.
Save her.
Yusuf fought at his side, his bandaged brow dripping sweat, his fists and blade a blur.
Don't stop, Adil. Don't you dare stop. Shahbaz wielded a staff, sweeping enemies off their feet, his voice rising in fierce cries. For truth. For freedom.
Khan Sahib, the old, stood firm at the front, his cane discarded, a sword in his hand. His strikes were slow but sure, his voice commanding, steadying the men when they faltered. The villagers rallied around him, their fear burned away by the sight of their leader standing not above them, but among them. Inside the Haveli, Sanaa heard the chaos. She strained against her bonds, her wrists raw. The clash of steel, the cries of men, it was all so close. Her heart pounded with desperate hope.
Adil, come to me. Please.
On the battlefield, Malik Sahib cut through his own men to reach Khan Sahib. The two faced each other, eyes blazing, swords raised. You were my brother, Khan Sahib shouted, his voice heavy with grief.
Why did you choose darkness? Because darkness obeys me. Malik Sahib snarled.
His blade crashed against Khan Sahib's, sparks flying. The duel began, two old lions, striking with fury, each blow a memory shattered. The villagers froze at the sight, as if time itself had paused for this reckoning.
Meanwhile, Adil forced his way through the melee, Yusuf and Shahbaz guarding his back.
He reached the Haveli doors, kicking them open, torchlight spilling into the dark halls.
Sanaa, he roared.
Her voice answered, muffled but fierce.
Adil. Here.
He followed the sound, heart hammering, until he found the locked room.
He kicked the door, once, twice, wood splintered. Sanaa's face appeared in the shadows, eyes wide with relief. Hold on.
Adil slashed the ropes from her wrists, pulling her into his arms. She trembled, but her spirit was unbroken. I knew you'd come, she whispered. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathless. I would have torn the world apart to find you. Outside, the duel raged. Malik Sahib struck with brutal strength, driving Khan Sahib back.
The old man's arm shook, his breaths ragged.
Malik Sahib's laughter rang out, cruel and triumphant. Your time is over, Khan Sahib. Yield, or die.
But Khan Sahib's eyes burned with defiance.
With one final surge, he parried the blow and struck back, his sword grazing Malik Sahib's arm. Blood splattered the ground. The villagers roared in support.
Malik Sahib's face twisted with rage.
He lunged, just as Adil and Sanaa emerged from the Haveli, torchlight spilling over them.
Stop! Adil shouted.
His voice cut through the battle.
It's over, Malik Sahib. She is free. Your power is broken. The people stand with us now, not you.
Malik Sahib froze, his eyes darting between Adil, Sanaa, and the villagers. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face.
But only for a moment.
Then his smile returned, dark and terrible.
This is not over. Not while I breathe.
He raised his sword again, his gaze locked on Adil.
And the night held its breath.
The courtyard of Malik Sahib's Haveli was a battlefield drenched in firelight and shadows. Bodies lay groaning on the ground, torches hissed in the dust, and the air reeked of sweat, blood, and fear. But in the center of it all, silence had fallen. Every eye was fixed on the three figures locked in fate's grip: Khan Sahib, sword trembling in his old hand, Malik Sahib, teeth bared like a wolf, and Adil, standing between them, Sanaa at his back, his dagger gleaming in the torchlight. Move aside, boy, Malik Sahib hissed, his voice sharp as broken glass.
This is between me and your father.
Adil's chest heaved, but his stance was unshaken.
No. This is between you and me now. You tried to break me, to chain me with fear. You used Sana as your pawn. Tonight it ends.
The villagers murmured, shifting nervously. Some clutched their wounds, others leaned on sticks or swords, but all eyes were riveted to Adil. It was no longer about two old men's pride. It was about the next generation, the future of the village. Malik Sahib's lips curled into a cold smile.
So the boy grows teeth. Very well. Let us see if they can bite.
He lunged, his sword flashing like a streak of silver. Adil ducked, barely escaping the first strike. The clash of steel rang as his dagger met Malik Sahib's blade.
Sparks flew.
Adil staggered back, his arm burning from the force.
Malik Sahib pressed forward, each blow heavy and merciless. Adil!
Sana cried out, but Yusuf held her back.
Don't break his focus.
Yusuf whispered fiercely. His own fists clenched, aching to intervene, but he knew this was Adil's fight. Khan Sahib tried to step forward, but Shahbaz gripped his arm.
No, Baba.
If you fight for him, the people will say he could not stand as a man. Let him prove himself. Khan Sahib's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his eyes never leaving his son. The duel raged, fire reflecting in Malik Sahib's furious eyes. He struck again and again, his strength like a hammer. Adil blocked, dodged, rolled, his smaller blade flashing in desperate arcs. Each clash jolted through his bones. His breath came ragged, sweat streaming down his face. You are weak. Malik Sahib snarled, driving him back against a pillar. You hide behind love like a shield. But love breaks. Fear endures. Adil's dagger slipped, nearly torn from his hand. Malik Sahib's sword grazed his shoulder, a line of red blossoming across his shirt. He gasped, his knees buckling. For a heartbeat, the crowd thought it was over. But then Adil's eyes lifted, and in them burned something fiercer than pain. He remembered Sana's trembling hands clutching his when he freed her. He remembered Yusuf's faith, Shahbaz's loyalty, his mother's silent prayers, and even his father's gaze, stern but proud. Malik Sahib was wrong. Love did not break. Love endured. Adil roared, surging forward. His dagger slashed upward, forcing Malik Sahib back. The older man snarled in surprise. The tide had shifted. Blow after blow, Adil matched him now, his movements faster, sharper.
Malik Sahib's strikes grew wilder, his arrogance cracking. You cannot win. Malik Sahib bellowed. I am the law here. I am the power.
No, Adil shouted, his voice carrying across the battlefield. You were the fear.
But tonight, the fear dies.
With a final burst, he drove his dagger into the hilt of Malik Sahib's sword, twisting. Metal screeched. Malik Sahib stumbled, his blade flung from his hand, clattering across the stones. The villagers gasped. Adil stood panting, his dagger at Malik Sahib's throat. His chest rose and fell like a storm. Every muscle trembled, every bone throbbed, but his spirit was unbroken. Yield, Adil growled. For the first time, Malik Sahib faltered. His eyes darted to the crowd, to Khan Sahib, to Sana, and he saw no ally, no savior. Only judgment. Yet even now, his pride would not bow. His lips twisted in a sneer. Strike me down, then. Prove to them you are no different than I, kill me, and the blood will stain your hands forever. The crowd held its breath. Would Adil spill blood? Would he end the tyrant's life and risk becoming the very thing he despised? Adil's hand shook. The dagger pressed against Malik Sahib's throat. Sana's voice, trembling, reached him. Adil, your fight was never for revenge. It was for love. Don't let him poison it now. Her words pierced through the rage. Slowly, painfully, Adil lowered the blade. I will not be you, he said, his voice breaking. I will not build fear. I will build truth.
Malik Sahib's face twisted with fury at his mercy. He lunged suddenly, pulling a hidden knife from his robes. Gasps erupted, too fast, too close, aimed at Adil's chest. But before the blade could land, Khan Sahib moved. With a cry that shook the night, he stepped between them, his old sword flashing. Steel met steel. Malik Sahib's knife dropped to the ground, clattering harmlessly. The effort drained him. Khan Sahib staggered, his chest heaving, but he stood tall beside his son. His voice rang like thunder. "This ends now." The villagers erupted in cries. They surged forward, seizing Malik Sahib, tearing the knife from his reach, binding his arms with ropes. His struggles were useless, he was no longer a lion, only a caged jackal. The courtyard filled with shouts, sobs, and prayers of relief. Men embraced, women rushed to tend the wounded, children peeked wide-eyed from behind their mothers' skirts. Sana ran to Adil, throwing her arms around him. He winced at his wound, but held her tightly, burying his face in her hair. "You're safe," he whispered, his voice raw. "No," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We are safe." Khan Sahib placed a trembling hand on Adil's shoulder. His eyes, for once, shone with unhidden pride. "Tonight, you became more than my son. You became the voice of this village." Adil's throat tightened. For years he had longed for his father's recognition, and now, in the firelit ruins of battle, he had it. But Malik Sahib's voice cut through the moment, venomous even in defeat. "You think you've won? You think this night will be remembered as your triumph? No. It will be remembered as betrayal. Brother against brother. Son against elder. You have torn apart the very fabric of our people." The villagers shouted him down, but doubt flickered in Adil's chest. Was Malik Sahib right? Had he saved the village, or had he only sown seeds of division that would haunt them? As dawn's first light crept over the horizon, painting the sky in blood-red hues, Adil stood in the courtyard, staring at the bound figure of Malik Sahib. His victory tasted like ashes. The battle was over. But the war for truth was not yet won. The first light of morning spilled across the village, painting the rooftops gold, washing the blood-stained courtyard of Malik Sahib's Haveli in pale brightness. The fires that had burned through the night now smoldered as faint trails of smoke rose into the calm sky. But the people did not yet rest. They gathered in silence, bruised and weary, their eyes turned toward the center where Malik Sahib sat bound, his pride still burning though his power had crumbled. Adil stood with Sana beside him, his arm bandaged hastily by Yusuf. Every movement sent pain shooting through his shoulder, but he did not falter. He had faced Malik Sahib's fury and lived. Yet his heart was heavy. The village still trembled with fear, and even in defeat, Malik Sahib's voice had poisoned the air. Khan Sahib sat on a chair, his cane once more in hand. His breathing was shallow, his body battered from the fight, but his eyes were steady. Around him stood Yusuf, Shabazz, and the elders, waiting for his word. It was time for judgment. Khan Sahib's voice rose, slow but firm. "Malik Sahib, once you were my brother, not by blood, but by trust. Together we led this village, side by side. But you let pride consume you. You broke our code. You stole innocence to gain control. You raised your hand against your own people." Malik Sahib lifted his chin, his bound hands clenching. "I did what was necessary. You are blinded by sentiment. A village ruled by love is a village that collapses. Fear keeps order. Fear keeps people in line. And you, old man, you will see this truth when the same people who cheer you today turn against you tomorrow." The villagers shifted uneasily, his words cutting close to their hidden fears. But Khan Sahib did not waver. Fear builds walls. Love builds bridges. It is time the people choose which they will live under. He looked to the crowd. "Shall Malik Sahib remain your master, ruling by terror? Or shall we end this darkness today?" The villagers erupted in cries. "End it! End the darkness!" Their voices rose like thunder, shaking the courtyard. Malik Sahib sneered, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. For the first time,
he saw his people not cowering, but standing. Adil stepped forward, his voice carrying. "We will not kill him. Let that be the difference between us and him. Malik Sahib will face exile. Let him live with the shame of his defeat, knowing he has no place among those he tried to break." The villagers murmured in approval. Khan Sahib nodded, his eyes meeting his son's. "Wisely spoken." But Malik Sahib spat at the ground, his voice dripping venom. "Exile me, and you will regret it. My name still carries weight beyond this village. Allies will come. You cannot silence me." Adil's jaw tightened. "Perhaps. But you will not silence the truth either. And truth travels farther than fear." Two men stepped forward, ropes in hand. They pulled Malik Sahib to his feet. He resisted, cursing, his eyes blazing at Adil. "You may have won today, boy, but mark my words, you will pay for this defiance." Adil met his gaze without flinching. "Then let the whole world see who you are. Your threats no longer frighten me." As Malik Sahib was dragged from the Haveli, his shouts echoing, the villagers exhaled as one. It was over. But even as relief spread, the cost of the night lay heavy. Wounded men were carried out, women wept over sons and brothers, children stared wide-eyed at the scars of battle. The village would not forget this night. Adil walked with Sana into the courtyard's quiet corner. She looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "You saved me. You saved all of us. But Adil, will they ever truly accept me?" He cupped her face gently, his voice soft. "They will. Not because of who your family is, or what anyone says. They will, because I will never let go of you. Together, we will teach them love is not shame. Love is strength." She smiled through her tears, leaning into his touch. Nearby, Yusuf clasped Adil's shoulder. "Brother, I thought you were finished when his blade struck. You fought like a lion. Our children will tell this story one day." Shabazz grinned, though his face bore cuts. "Yes, but let's not forget who shielded your back while you were lost in Sana's name." Laughter rippled among them, easing the heaviness of the dawn. Later, in Khan Sahib's home, the family gathered. The air was thick with unspoken words. Zainab, Adil's mother, sat beside her husband, her eyes weary but relieved. Sana sat close to her, hesitant, unsure if she was truly welcome. Khan Sahib looked at them all, then fixed his gaze on Sana. "Child, I was blind. I let old pride cloud my judgment. But last night, it was your courage that kept Adil's heart strong. You belong here, if you will have us." Sana's lips trembled. She lowered her gaze, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I will, if you accept me as your daughter." Zainab reached forward, taking her hands. "From this day, you are mine as much as Adil is. My home is your home." Adil exhaled, his shoulders loosening as if a great weight had lifted. At last, the love he had fought for was not a shameful secret, but a bond his family embraced. That evening, the village gathered once more in the square. The scars of battle still marred the earth, but the mood was different, lighter, freer. Khan Sahib addressed them, his cane planted firmly in the ground. "We stood against tyranny last night. But our true task begins now. We must rebuild trust, rebuild unity. Let no one forget, strength does not come from fear. It comes from standing together in truth." His voice carried through the crowd, and people nodded, their eyes shining with hope. Adil stood beside Sana, his fingers entwined with hers. The whispers that once condemned their love had turned to words of respect, even admiration. He could see it in the villagers' faces, they had witnessed his courage, and in doing so, they had been forced to question their own hearts. But as the moon rose again, casting its glow over the quiet village, Adil stood on the veranda of his home, staring into the night. Sana joined him, wrapping her shawl against the chill. "You're restless," she whispered. He nodded. Malik Sahib was right about one thing. Fear spreads fast. He may find others to follow him. The world outside is larger than our village, and not everyone will accept what we've done. Sana leaned against him. "Then we face it together."
Whatever comes. He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her hair. Together. Behind them, the door creaked open. Khan Sahib stepped out, his face lined with exhaustion, yet softened with something rare, peace. He looked at his son, his daughter-in-law to be, and the village beyond. You have changed everything, Adil, he said quietly. You have shown me that truth does not end with us. It begins with you. Promise me you will guard it, no matter what comes. Adil met his father's eyes, his voice steady. I promise. And for the first time, Khan Sahib smiled, his pride unhidden. The story of that night lived on for years. Children grew hearing of the boy who stood against fear, the girl who gave him strength, and the village that chose truth over tyranny. Malik Sahib's name faded, whispered only as a warning of what pride could destroy. But Adil and Sanaa's love endured, a reminder that no family, no tradition, no power was stronger than the courage to stand for what was right. Moral: families may break under pride, but they are mended by truth. Love is never the enemy, fear is. When love stands against fear, even the strongest chains fall apart.